Chapter 1375. Madame Han's family name was Tao. Although her family was not as rich as the Fangs, it was much richer than 10 Fangs. The Tao's genealogy could be traced back to before the 16 kingdoms, but it was after the establishment of Dongqing. Their performance before that was mediocre. Before the establishment of Dongqing, the ancestors of the Taos had sharp eyes and decisively placed a heavy bet on the founding father of Dongqing. After the establishment of the country, Madame Tao was one of the royal family's confidants. She helped the royal family to monitor the southern salt affairs. After decades, she had accumulated a lot of wealth. Until more than 20 years ago, when 2 emperors of Dongqing made a mess and ignored the court, Madame Tao took advantage of the loopholes and cooperated with the local gentry to control the salt affairs in the southern territory of Dongqing. She did a lot of tricks on the taxes. After tasting the sweetness too many times, she became bolder and bolder. Of course, the grand occasion of adding oil to the fire and flowers also scared many people who were still clear-minded. They never thought that God would be so powerful. Dongqing was invaded by the northern borderline, the earthquake in Shangjing, and the capital was moved to Chenzhou. After a series of tricks, Dongqing was played to death by the royal family. Then there was the separation of feudal vassals. All the forces fought fiercely for a little territory. Under such circumstances, who would pay attention to the illicit salt business? Madame Tao and several other powerful forces tore up the last fig leaf and openly occupied the illicit salt business. In just a few years, they had accumulated a huge wealth that was even greater than Jiang Pengji's. To make an analogy, they could not even be compared to the northern borderline, which was a big fat sheep in the past. It could be seen how rich Madame Tao and the others were. How could Madame Tao and the others be willing to let go? How could Jiang Pengji allow Madame Tao to continue to occupy? That was the irreconcilable contradiction. That was the root cause of Han Yu and his wife's divorce. Otherwise, they would not have divorced so easily for the sake of their 2 legitimate sons. Han Yu was well aware of that, but Madame Han did not notice it. She left most of the dowry to her 2 legitimate sons and returned to her hometown with a small part of her assets and servants. In order to preserve her dignity, Madame Han was very calm in front of Han Yu, but she could not help crying when she was alone. "My lady, why did you do this?" The dowry nanny looked at her dejected wife, who had grown up with a baby's milk, and felt very uncomfortable. Madame Han said, "I just find it hard to calm down. The Tao family doesn't know about the divorce between the First Lady and the son-in-law yet." The dowry nanny said worriedly, "If they go back like this, I'm afraid." Madame Han pretended to be calm. "Nanny, don't worry." The dowry nanny sighed. Her voice was filled with deep worry. How could a divorced daughter receive the same treatment as when she was still single? Madame Han suddenly remembered what Jiang Pengji had asked her before. "I'm very curious. If Wenbin was Bogeo and his wife was Qi Chaolan, would you also be rejected by your own family?" Madame Han suddenly shook her head. No matter how bad her situation was, she would never fall to the state of a stray dog. Everyone in the Tao family was surprised by Madame Han's arrival. After asking about it, both parents' expressions changed. "You've divorced Wenbin?" Father Tao's voice sounded very serious, with a hint of reprimand and fierceness. Because Madame Han was tired from the long journey, her expression was rather tired, but she still wanted to raise her spirits and not lose her etiquette in front of her parents. "Yes," she said faintly. "Your daughter and Wenbin have divorced." Father Tao's fingers paused in midair. His fingertips trembled slightly with his heavy breathing, showing his master's tumbling guilt. After a while, he reprimanded Madame Han. "Silly, you rebellious daughter." Madame Han's tired face turned into puzzlement. She said, "Wenbin and I are not fated to be together. If he wants a divorce, what can I do?" Father Tao said, "Even so, you shouldn't have divorced at this time. What a rebellious daughter. Are you trying to anger your father to death?" Madame Han was stunned by the reprimand. Father Tao lost control of his emotions. If not for Mother Tao's persuasion, Madame Han would have been reprimanded even worse. Mother Tao said, "Master, what we should do now is not to reprimand your daughter. We should think of a way to get through this. Under Mother Tao's persuasion, Father Tao's emotions calmed down a lot. Madame Han's heart skipped a beat. She was secretly guessing what difficult problem the Tao family had encountered when Mother Tao asked her, "I know your character. You have given birth to Wenbin's children. Even if you don't have any credit, you have worked hard. Why does he want to divorce you?" Father Tao and Mother Tao did not care about the divorce between their daughter and son-in-law. They cared about why the two of them wanted to divorce at this sensitive time. What was the reason for the divorce? Madame Han was keenly aware of her parents' abnormality, but she could not figure out the reason, so she could only tell the truth. In Madame Han's opinion, the reason for the divorce was that the relationship between husband and wife had been worn away by life. She and Hanyu had different ideas. Both of them were stubborn and refused to give in. Moreover, Jiang Pengji was between them. It was only a matter of time before their marriage broke down. Father Tao and Mother Tao did not speak for a long time. Their eyes flickered, as if they were weighing the deep meaning behind the words. The atmosphere between the three of them was a little gloomy. After dinner, she privately summoned the housekeeper of the Tao family and asked him about the recent events in the family. The housekeeper had served the Tao family for many years. He was one of Father Tao's most trusted confidants, so he knew a lot of things. Faced with Madame Han's inquiry, the housekeeper rarely hesitated. Madame Han said, "As soon as I came back, I heard that the Tao family encountered an insurmountable obstacle. As the daughter of the Tao family, how could I stay out of it?" The housekeeper said, "First Lady, it is not that we cannot talk about it. It is just that Master and Madam are worried about you, so they did not mention it." Madame Han frowned and said, "Just say it." The housekeeper mentioned that Jiang Pengji had sent people to investigate the local illegal salt business and taxes. Madame Han's face turned pale when she heard it. "Master and Madam are also worried that Lu Shi is obviously up to no good. I'm afraid that he wants to meddle in the salt business. First Lady and young Master Tao are divorcing at this time. We have to worry that Lu Shi might have heard some rumors and forced young Master Tao to divorce you. After all, Hanyu is Jiang Pengji's trusted confidant. If she took action against Madame Tao, took back the salt business, and reorganized the taxes, then how could Madame Tao, who was already in the mire, get out of it easily? Madame Tao could not escape, and Madame Han, who was born in the Tao family, could not escape either. As the Tao family's son-in-law, Hanyu would most likely be implicated. Hearing this, Madame Han's tired face became a bit lifeless. Although salt looked ordinary, it was a necessity for the people in the world. It seemed to be worthless, but it was actually a huge profit. Because everyone needed it, there was no worry that salt could not be sold. It could make people rich in an instant. Chapter 1376. If she was still Hanyu's wife, based on how much Jiang Pengji valued Hanyu, she would probably hold back for fear of harming the innocent. In the end, she left without saying a word. Jiang Pengji had no more scruples. She was afraid that she would not be merciful. The housekeeper didn't say anything, but judging from his expression, he agreed with Madame Han's words. It was unwise to leave at this juncture. The housekeeper sighed. Now, I only hope that was not Lord Lanting's idea to leave the First Lady. Madame Han was anxious and uneasy. Now that she thought about it carefully, she couldn't figure out the real reason why she left Hanyu. Madame Han stayed in the Tao's house. Although she didn't go out every day, she could feel that the atmosphere in the house had become weird. According to the servant girl's report, carriages were coming and going in an endless stream outside the Tao's house. The frequency of the gentry families who were on good terms with them became extremely frequent. She smelled the scent of an impending storm. It turned out that Madame Han's premonition was right. Madame Tao and the other families were discussing to make trouble. Even though the salt business had always been controlled by the state, Madame Tao and the others had enjoyed the benefits for decades, especially after the world was in chaos. They had even taken off the last fig leaf and regarded the salt business as their private property. How could they be willing to hand over the money tree to an outsider? Many of them even had a crazy idea. Jiang Pengji was just a feudal lord with a relatively large influence. She was not the emperor yet. She was not the emperor. What right did she have to ask Madame Tao and the others to hand over the salt business? In Jiang Pengji's words, one wouldn't feel pity if they lost something that they had never had. However, once they had it, no one would let it go if an outsider wanted to take it away. In order to protect this item, many people would even take the risk out of desperation and go crazy. Madame Tao and the others were typical examples. Madame Tao had a big share of the illicit salt business, and the other families had also tasted the benefits. Each family had made a lot of money. This force was already like a grasshopper on a rope. They were bound together for good or bad. None of them wanted Jiang Pengji to take away their interests. However, Jiang Pengji was so powerful that they had to come up with a perfect plan. Otherwise, they would lose everything. They had thought of many ways, but there were only two ways in front of them, where they could bow their heads and become a well-behaved aristocrat, content with a little bit of wealth, or they could rise up and resist, using small to win big. They were not willing to be the former, so they could only choose the latter. Someone said, "Damn it. If I had known that Lu Shi had such wild ambitions, I would have rebelled against her before the situation in Dongqing was settled." The situation in Dongqing was still unsettled. A few feudal lords were locked in a fierce battle. This was a good opportunity for them to fish in troubled waters. Now, Su Fei, Su Bei, and Huang Song had successively knelt down. Dongqing had become Jiang Pengji's sole authority. What could they use to confront her head-on? The other person thought about it and said, "Even so, it's not like there's no other way." When Papa Tao heard this, he asked the man, "What do you mean?" The man reminded, "Gentlemen, please do not forget that other than Lu Shi, there is still a feudal vassal in Dongqing." Everyone was stunned for a moment, and only after a long while did they remember something. Dongqing Zhangzhou was still in Yang Tao's hands. Papa Tao asked, "What do you mean by that? Are you asking us to switch to Yang Tao?" The man shook his head and said, "No. When we turn to Yang Tao covets the salt business. Isn't that the same as circling back? It's better to frame Yang Tao and make Lu Shi and Yang Tao fight. This way, no matter who wins or loses, both of them will be greatly weakened and won't be able to take care of us." They could also take the opportunity to use their savings, recruit soldiers, and expand their influence. When that time comes, they would not be held back by others. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? When they heard this suggestion, everyone was a little convinced. No, they were a little terrified. A dynasty with 100 years of history and 1,000 years of aristocratic families. History had proven that the change of dynasties was an unstoppable trend. The aristocratic families could survive the change of dynasties, but the royal family could not. They would inevitably be treated as the remnants of the previous dynasty and wiped out, let alone continue. Due to various reasons, although the aristocratic families controlled a lot of resources, they were more inclined to invest in politics rather than take a gamble. Of course, there might be another reason. For example, they were not capable enough, or did they not know what was going on? No matter what, this conversation ended on a sour note. The balance in everyone's hearts was wavering. On one side was the lucrative salt business, and on the other side was the risk of occupying the salt business. It was not a good choice. In the end, their greed won over their reason. Jiang Pengji was a meticulous person. Since she had set her eyes on the salt business, she would not fight a battle unprepared. A year ago, she not only sent messengers, but she also analyzed the aristocratic families and planted many spies. These spies monitored the movements of the aristocratic families led by Madame Tao and passed the news to Jiang Pengji. She attached great importance to the salt business. Once there was news, it would be passed to her as quickly as possible. While Madame Tao and the others were hesitating, Jiang Pengji had already received the relevant news. If they really dare to rebel, I respect them as men. You can't even compare to me. Are you still a man? Tudu Feichio. How can they hide their tricks from great sage Zhang's fiery eyes? They're showing their fox's tail. Qingfeng Banshui. Alas, they can only think of provoking the streamer and Yang Tao to fight so that they can reap the benefits. The salted fish in the streaming room secretly scolded Madame Tao for being insidious. She was so greedy that she didn't even know death was at hand. Except for Zhuge Liang, who pretended to be a serious strategist, the other salted fish were still eating melon seeds and ridiculing her. Lao Ciji Lianming. With all due respect, whoever competes with you in being decisive is a sissy. You can form an alliance if you want. You can kill an acquaintance if you want. A white knife goes in and a red knife comes out. Which man in the world dares to compete with her in manliness? Nongfu Shangquan Yudi Yangshuan. Sharp criticism. There are no men and women in front of the streamer, only girls and girls with big penises. Jiang Pengji habitually ignored the salted fish's daily naughtiness. Wei Si asked her, "How do you plan to deal with these people?" Jiang Pengji said, "I was worried that after a year of cultivation, I have no reason to find trouble with Zhengze. Madame Tao and the others are so considerate and took the initiative to give me a ready-made weakness. Wouldn't it be a pity if I cut the Gordian knot and killed them all at once? Make the best use of everything. Even the enemy had value. It would be a pity to waste it." Jiang Pengji had been eyeing Yang Tao Zhangzhou for a long time. However, the previous alliance had ended, and there was no suitable reason to kill the alliance. Since Madame Tao had helped her solve this problem, she didn't mind letting Madame Tao and the others live for a few more days. Wei Si couldn't help but be speechless. "You mean to let them set up a trap and involve the Duke of Zhengze?" Jiang Pengji smiled wickedly and touched Wei Si's lips with her index finger. "Wrong. Not only Zhengze, I want to swallow the whole of Nanshan. Dragging Zhengze into the water is just the first step." She was greedy beyond measure. How could she be satisfied with a small Zhangzhou? Chapter 1377. Even if Madame Tao and the others racked their brains, they would never have thought that Jiang Pengji would be so cunning. They were still dreaming of being the fishermen who would benefit from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam. Little did they know that while their dreams were plump, the reality was very harsh. When Jiang Pengji told Qiguan Rang and the others about Madame Tao's wishful thinking, Qiguan Rang frowned slightly, and there was some ridicule in his eyes. Qiguan Rang thought for a long time before he could think of a more suitable adjective. "Are somewhat naive." Jiang Pengji smiled. "They are indeed quite naive." Yang Si chuckled and said, "Our Lord has a keen eye. How could she take the bait so easily? Yang Tao is not someone easy to deal with. How could he be so easily schemed against?" Madame Tao and the others wanted to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. They really thought too highly of themselves. Do they have the right to sit on the fishing platform? This was still a euphemism. In the words of the salted fish in the live streaming room, Madame Tao and the others had no idea at all. Didn't he take a look at his own capabilities? Did he have the qualifications to boast in front of these two giants? Even Huang Song and the Su brothers hadn't managed to do it. Yet Madame Tao and the rest dared to dream about it. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and glanced at Yang Si from the corner of her eye. Yang Si was like a spring breeze in recent days. Even though Yang Si had been busy with Hanyu for a few days, he still couldn't hide the pride in his heart. Show off." Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Jing Rong, you are wrong. Madame Tao and the others imitate Jiang Tai Gong in fishing. I'm the fish that is willing to take the bait. If Madame Tao didn't stir up trouble, Jiang Pengji would have to think hard about how to make Yang Tao unhappy. Madame Tao set up a trap for her and Yang Tao, which was exactly what she wanted." Qiguan Rang said coldly, "That's exactly what my lord wishes for, but Yang Tao won't take the bait so easily." Everyone had analyzed a few feudal vassals in the past. Those who were led by their lord were mostly ambitious people who had their eyes on the throne. However, there were also lords who were more relaxed, such as Yang Tao. Yang Tao's original intention for the uprising was to avenge his father, Yang Jian. Ever since Zhao Xiao's death, Yang Tao's hatred for his father's murder had been completely lifted. As a lord, Yang Tao lacked a bit of wildness. He had more than enough defense, but not enough offense. Yang Tao was so easygoing that if Madame Tao set up a trap, he might not bite the bait. He also had Yin Lin, who was extremely difficult to deal with. Madame Tao could fool Yang Tao, but she might not be able to fool Yanlin. Salted fish also have dreams. Maybe Madame Tao's dream can come true. Jiang Pengji spoke like a gangster. She changed the topic and said with a smile, "Moreover, what we need is a reason to take action, not a reasonable reason to take action. As long as there was a reason, it did not need to be reasonable." Which of Jiang Pengji's confidants was not a shrewd person? Their lord was such a hooligan, and they were also tired. The princesses were mentally exhausted, but in the live stream room, Salted Fish was happily chatting away. Tudu Faccio. The host style is exactly the same as that of a country that claims to be the world's police. She's the most like a hooligan cop. Sincere invitation to join, as expected of an ancient giant. The bullet screen is always accurate. The host's hooligan behavior was indeed very similar to that of a certain country. Both of them would take action as long as they had a reason. They did not care whether the reason was convincing or not, or whether it was reasonable. Qing Feng Wen Pu, you're capable, but willful. Qing Zue Lemon Slice. The newbie in the live broadcast room is trembling. You can talk about politics here? Aren't you afraid of being banned? Lao Ciji Lianmeng. You're indeed a newbie in the live broadcast room. You don't know that not only China, but the world's #1 hooligan can't do anything about it. Okay? TSK, don't talk about politics. You won't be banned even if you serialize an article with the 8th letter in the live broadcast room. Don't talk about politics or serialize an article with the 8th letter. You can even form a group to demonstrate with a bullet screen. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan. I don't agree with this metaphor. The host is obviously a very reasonable person. The Salted Fish audience did not want to defame Jiang Pengji. They just expressed their feelings. This topic was quickly drowned out by wave after wave of bullet screen comments. On the other side, Jiang Pengji and the princesses were still discussing. Jiang Pengji noticed that Wei Xi's expression was somewhat hesitant to speak, so she took the time to ask, "Zixiao, do you have a different opinion?" Wei Xi said, "Reporting to my lord, I think it's still too early to mobilize the troops." "How can we mobilize the troops now? We have to wait until the beginning of spring next year at the earliest." Jiang Pengji shook her head and sighed. The continuous wars have made the people of all the provinces suffer. If we want to mobilize the troops against Yang Tao, we have to recuperate for a year or two to let everyone recover their strength. Even if Jiang Pengji's family was rich, she had suffered a great loss after fighting the Su brothers and Huang Song in succession. In order to increase her income, she set her eyes on the salt business controlled by Madame Tao and the others, hoping to get back at them. If Madame Tao and the others were sensible, Jiang Pengji did not mind them taking the family assets they had previously accumulated and retreating in one piece. At most, she would restrict this faction of people from entering officialdom and suppress their ambitions. Who would have expected them to be so ambitious and insatiable? Jiang Pengji could not continue to indulge them. Salt was related to the people's livelihood. Its importance was comparable to copper and iron. Unless one's brain was kicked by a donkey, she would not allow private forces to control the salt business. Madame Tao and the others were so insensible. If Jiang Pengji did not cut them into pieces, she would write her name backwards. When Wei Xi heard this, he knew that his lord had misunderstood, so he hurriedly explained. "That's not what I meant." Wei Xi said, "The situation in Nansheng is quite chaotic at the moment. The feudal lords and the 4 factions of Nanman are confronting each other. It's like a raging fire. If my lord hastily intervenes, you will definitely be accused of aiding the barbarians. It's really not appropriate." This was like when Jiang Pengji attacked the northern borderline. Meng Zhan wanted to stab her in the back, but he ended up being condemned by everyone. Similarly, when the feudal lords of Nansheng joined forces to fight against Nanman, Jiang Pengji would be reviled by the world for taking advantage of the situation. This accusation could not be washed clean by the water army. Jiang Pengji said, "Zixiao's words make sense. However, as long as they don't destroy the 4 factions of Nanman, I can't use my troops against them." The 4 factions of Nanman had become a protection umbrella for those rookies. Wei Xi shook his head and said, "The The various forces in Nansheng will unite to fight against Nanman. The outcome will be clear by next summer. He had the experience of his previous life. Analyzing the situation in this life, he felt that the 4 factions of Nanman were about to be destroyed. Jiang Pengji said, Zixiao, do you hope that I will wait until they are badly injured and then reap the benefits? Wei Xi nodded. Didn't Her Majesty take advantage of this in her previous life? And Shui defeated the 4 factions of Nanman and massacred more than 638,000 people. He was also badly injured and had no power to defend himself. In the end, Shui's Nansheng was taken advantage of by Her Majesty, who had sent troops south. It didn't take much effort to subdue the whole of Nansheng. Even if the Lord in this life was doing much better than Her Majesty in her previous life, the situation in Nansheng was very different from her previous life. Wei Xi didn't want her to take risks. Jiang Pengji said, It doesn't seem to be a long time from the beginning of spring to the summer solstice. We could still afford to wait. It was rare that Qiguan Rang didn't object. He only glanced at Wei Xi from the corner of his eyes. Finally, he looked down coldly. Chapter 1378. Sigh. Are we going to let the cooked duck fly away, just like that? Jiang Pengji was somewhat indignant. She had already made up her mind to kill Yang Tao, but Wei Xi told her that she could not do it. She was really frustrated. Wei Xi smiled and said, My lord, you're wrong. I'm not watching the cooked duck fly away. I'm just watching them cook better. Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and chuckled. Zixiao, I like what you said. Wei Xi lowered his head slightly, and the corners of his lips curled up a little. Qiguan Rang, Yang Si, and a few others who knew the situation looked on coldly and snorted in their hearts. She had kicked over the basin of cold dog food. Jiang Pengji had to adjust her plan, but Madame Tao did not have the same tacit understanding. She was still scratching her head and thinking of stirring up trouble. How could they provoke the relationship between the 2 feudal lords and make them fight each other? This problem was extremely challenging and stumped a group of people. If Jiang Pengji was a man, they could search for the most beautiful women in the world and follow the example of their predecessors. For a man, the humiliation of being cuckolded and the hatred of having one's wife stolen were more ingrained than any other humiliation. However, Jiang Pengji was a woman and Yang Tao was a man. Unless one of them was a gay man or a G-man, it would not work. It might not work. I heard that Lu Shi is not close to men. He only has women to serve him. One of the people said something shocking. Yang Tao seems to like men too. He has a close relationship with his advisor, Yin Lin. The 2 of them married each other's sisters. They often sit at the same table, lie together, and sleep together. I'm afraid it's impossible to say that there is nothing going on between them. Everyone was speechless for a long time after hearing this. It made sense, and they could not refute it. They were originally about to give up on the honey trap, but after this person said this, they were actually a little eager to try it. Compared to other strategies that cut flesh and let blood out, this honey trap was cheap and the cost was low. It was very cost-effective. It's not right, it's not right, it's not right. This operation was too flashy. What if the boat capsized accidentally? Many of the old antiques were more inclined to conventional operations, such as forging Yang Tao's troops crossing the border to kill and plunder, or forging Jiang Pengji's troops crossing the border to kill Yang Tao's men, using this as a pretext to stir up conflict between the 2 parties. In addition to camouflage, they could also use financial resources to bribe Yang Tao's confidence. There is no loyalty in the world that couldn't be shaken by money. Madame Tao had money. As long as they took out enough money, they could naturally win over Yang Tao's confidence. He would first pretend to surrender and betray Jiang Pengji's military secrets. When the time was right, he would betray Yang Tao. Perfect. This was the normal style of double dealing. A honey trap, or something like that, was a disgrace to the culture. Unexpectedly, in the end, it was this honey trap that gained the upper hand. Everyone from the Tao clan, the reason why he chose the honey trap was naturally not because it was the most flirtatious operation, but because it was the most stealthy and practical. If they followed the conventional method of framing and framing, as long as the leaders of the 2 parties were not blinded by anger, They would be able to find them very quickly by following the clues. This was too risky. It was better to use a honey trap. There weren't many people who knew about it, so it was easier to keep it a secret. Even if the matter was exposed, he could abandon the beauty at that time, wash his hands clean, and escape unscathed. How exactly would it be implemented? Everyone from the Tao clan locked their gazes on the person who proposed this flirtatious operation. Since you were the one who proposed it, then you should carry it out. What was a honey trap? Nurture rebellious officials to confuse them. Enter a beautiful woman to confuse them. In short, it was to use beauty as a sugar-coated bullet to break down the enemy's will and make them lose the ability to fight. Given that Yang Tao and Jiang Pengji were of different genders and their sexual orientation was a mystery, the conventional honey trap might not work. The honey trap had to be changed. He ordered someone to find the portraits of Yang Tao, Yin Lin, and Jiang Pengji. The three of them were public figures, so their portraits were not considered secrets. Yang Tao's temperament was open and straightforward. He often fought with ordinary soldiers. Yin Lin was not an aloof Prince Charming who kept people 1,000 miles away. Not to mention Jiang Pengji. Not to mention the entire Wanzhou, who among the hundreds of thousands of people in the entire Xiangyang district did not know her face. The three of them were people who often showed their faces in front of ordinary people. Naturally, there were many portraits of them. This man took the portraits of the three of them and even found witnesses who had seen the three of them. He searched everywhere according to the pictures. He managed to find substitutes who looked 50 to 60% similar. They dressed up a little, practiced their manners, and imitated them. Even though they lacked charm and temperament, their appearances were 70 to 80% similar. Because they were found according to their appearances, the three of them had different backgrounds and ages. If they did not speak, they could deceive unfamiliar people. Once they spoke, they would reveal their flaws. The man gave the families of the three a generous sum of money. They signed a death contract and bought their lives. Do whatever I want you to do. Don't do what you shouldn't do. Otherwise, your families can only take the money and go to hell to enjoy their lives. The three of them trembled. In the face of coercion from power, what other way out was there except to compromise? Thinking of their families and the money the man gave them, the three of them knew that their future was uncertain, but they still had to bite the bullet. The man sent substitutes who looked like Yang Tao and Yin Lin to Wanzhou, and sent the one who looked like Jiang Pengji to Zhangzhou. It was worth mentioning that the three of them were all men, including the one who looked like Jiang Pengji. Will this work? Seeing this, Madame Tao and the others were secretly worried. Of course it will work. It's hard to believe. The three of them are so uncouth. How can they take on such a heavy responsibility? How could the three of them, who came from a remote village or a brothel, incite two feudal lords to fight each other? Even if they took off their clothes, no one would be willing to look at them. Not to mention their ability to learn. Even their speech and mannerisms could not compare to the real deal. When they saw the three impostors speak, they revealed their badly worn and yellowed teeth, not to mention the drama. They could not imagine Yang Tao, Yin Lin, or Jiang Pengji revealing their missing yellowed teeth as they spoke. Not only that, but the three of them also had strong accents and bad breath. No matter how good-looking their faces were, they would not look good. It started with their looks and ended with yellowed teeth and bad breath. I have my own plan. Hearing this, Madame Tao and the others could not help but secretly roll their eyes. They wanted to see what kind of tricks this guy had up his sleeves. Jiang Pengji, who was watching them closely, was also very curious. She brought a small stool over and waited for the show to begin. I remember that Hanmei met Jingze and Xiaoyang, right? Jiang Pengji nibbled on melon seeds and looked at Li Yun with a smile. Li Yun did not understand, but he said honestly, I have indeed seen them. Jiang Pengji said, after you finish training the troops these few days, remember to walk around the city gate and see if there are people who look like them. Li Yun was surprised. They? How could they appear in Wanzhou? Jiang Pengji said, I didn't say they're the real deal. I heard they are high-quality imitations. I just don't know if they look like them. Li Yun did not understand the meaning of real deal and high-quality imitations, so he could only agree in a daze. Whatever the Lord said was the truth. It was rare that she was in a good mood, so he had to coax her more. His Lord was in a good mood and found less trouble. His own wonder could also get off work earlier to accompany him. Sigh, this was probably the tragedy of having two workers. Thinking of Yang Si, he felt much better. Chapter 1379. Anmei, have you encountered any problems these past 2 days? Why are you always frowning? Liyun tried his best to finish his meal. He was about to wipe his mouth and head to the army camp when his father suddenly called him. He blinked his eyes blankly and asked, "What's the problem? Everything went smoothly today. I'm not frowning." Xie Qian took advantage of Shang Wanwan's absence to question his son in a low voice. "Not frowning? Then why do you always look troubled when you come back every day?" Xie Qian was now an old master who did not care about anything. He only cared about enjoying his life. His daily routine was to practice martial arts, take a walk, and teach his granddaughter, Lin Huan. Because the female class of the Golden Scale Academy had to learn the art of body refining, to let his granddaughter win at the starting line, Xie Qian asked for a detailed diagram. He studied it before teaching it to his granddaughter. What was gratifying was that Lin Huan was indeed the descendant of a famous family. Her innate talent was even better than her father's. The art of body refining that only women could practice had endless uses. Coupled with the Xie family's unique skills, Lin Huan improved rapidly. Xie Qian dared to guarantee that when his granddaughter reached the age of initiation, she would definitely be invincible among her peers. His granddaughter had a bright future, and his son and daughter-in-law were Jiang Pengji's trusted confidants. Xie Qian's retirement life was exceptionally comfortable. He did not want external variables to disrupt the current situation. Liyun did not understand, but the person asking was Xie Qian, his father and master. Naturally, he would answer everything he knew. "I'm just a little confused," Xie Qian raised his brows and said. "As long as it doesn't involve important secrets, what doubts can't be said?" Xie Qian could not help but feel a headache coming on. In order for Liyun to have the ability to protect himself and avoid possible enemies, he had extremely strict requirements for Liyun's martial arts. Xie Qian created a simple and peaceful living environment for Liyun so that he could focus on mastering martial arts. The master and disciple lived as savages in the mountains for more than 10 years. There were pros and cons to this approach. The pros were obvious, but so were the cons. His son's talent seemed to be focused on martial arts and commanding troops. He also walked the path of righteousness, but the people under Master Lanting's tent were all black-hearted. Every time he saw his son squatting in a crowd of black sesame seeds, he was afraid that his son would be at a disadvantage. Congenital deficiencies could be made up for later. He did not seek to be as cunning as a fox, but he sought the ability to protect himself. Alas, there was little effect. Liyun also knew that he was at a disadvantage. When faced with a difficult problem that he could not decide on, he had to consult his father. "It's not that I can't tell you about this," Liyun said. "A few days ago, the Lord assigned me a task. She asked me to look out for people who looked like the Duke of Zhengze, Yang Tao, and Yin Lin. At first, I didn't think much of it, but after I came back, I was terrified." Liyun had been keeping an eye on the city gates for the past few days, his heart filled with worry. He was not good at concealing his emotions, so naturally he appeared to be preoccupied. The more you think about it, the more terrifying it is. Why? Even someone as astute as Xie Qian did not understand what Jiang Pengji was up to. Liyun may seem naive in other matters, but his intuition is extremely accurate. Everything is peaceful under the Lord's rule. The only trouble is from the Tao family. Someone who looks like Lord Jingze and Yin Lin popped up at this critical moment. "I'm worried that there's something fishy going on." Liyun added, "The Lord never fights a battle unprepared. There must be a deeper meaning to her targeting these two people. I'm not worried about anything else. I'm just worried that I'll miss these two people and give them a chance to stir up trouble. This is my dereliction of duty." Xie Qian said, "You suspect that the two people Lu Shi asked you to target are related to the Tao family?" Liyun nodded. Xie Qian tapped his finger on the table and frowned slightly. As a member of Sunset Glow's elderly pension group, Xie rarely came into contact with political affairs. He did not have many sources of information, so he could not analyze anything. However, he had to remind Li Yun of one thing. If these two people really appear, you must pay attention to their movements. Send people to keep a close eye on them at all times, Xie said. They look like Yang Tao and Yinlin. Although they're not real people, in the eyes of the people, they're considered half-real people. If something happens to these two people in Wanzhou, once someone spreads the news, it will be easily misunderstood as Lu Shi humiliating and slandering Yang Tao and Yinlin. You must be careful. Li Yun nodded, looking like he had learned something. Perhaps Xie Qian's poisonous words had hit him, but on the second day, Li Yun received news of the appearance of his targets. He hurriedly informed the Lord of the News. Jiang Pengji's lifeless eyes suddenly lit up. The past few days have been very boring. Finally, someone can relieve my boredom. Li Yun held back the words that had welled up in his throat. Everyone was extremely busy. How could the Lord still say the words, very boring, so easily? Looking at the many teachers, who were not even middle-aged and were about to go bald, wouldn't the Lord's conscience hurt? My Lord, it's still. Li Yun dutifully reminded her that it was still working hours. As the Lord, she could not take the lead in skipping work. Jiang Pengji said, I am the Lord. I have to do everything myself. Don't those who take my salary feel guilty? Li Yun's lips moved, but he could not find the words to retort. His lord's logic was very reasonable. He was speechless. Li Jiamaku, I, my lord, will skip work, wither into dust. Being a boss is to have a legitimate reason to skip work. Otherwise, what's the point of paying so much money? Sheniyo, I'm secretly excited. I wonder how similar Yang Tao and Yinlin's high imitations are to the real deal. Yang Tao and Yinlin were also handsome men who ranked highly on the attractiveness list. The former was bright and energetic, while the latter was dignified and romantic. However, the livestream was always following Jiang Pengji's perspective. The number of times they appeared could be counted on one hand. A group of good-looking fans could only hold onto the screenshots of the livestream to lick their faces. After so many years, the material was no longer fresh. They eagerly awaited new material. Even if they were high imitations, they could still satisfy their cravings. Lao Cg Lianmeng, streamer, can you stop bullying the little angel Hanmei? He's so hot and cute. Li Yun, Xie Zhe, and Qin Gong were recognized by Jiang Pengji as the three main mascots. Li Yun was also a veteran and the favorite of the generation. He had countless fans. Jiang Pengji looked at Li Yun's face and sighed faintly. If not for my good looks, how would I have the right to be bullied? Didn't he know that she valued appearances? Hitting was a sign of affection, scolding was a sign of love, and when one was deeply in love, one would kick him. Not beating Li Yun to death to express her love was already the greatest restraint she could muster. Li Yun was dumbfounded. Very quickly, Li Yun felt that he had found the answer. Even though he knew that the two men were imposters, their looks were undeniable. The Duke of Zhengze and Mr. Yin Xiaoyang are indeed rare handsome men in the world. It's a pity that the two of them didn't learn half of their charm. What a pity. Li Yun spoke with a straight face, but Jiang Pengji asked, don't you feel that the two men below are gay? Li Yun was at a loss. Beggars, Jiang Pengji muttered to herself. Forget it. I'd better not taint a righteous and straight man like you. The livestream room was filled with bullet screens, thanking Jiang Pengji for sparing the little angel Li Yun. Chapter 1380. When the two imposters arrived at Xiangyang District, they did not know that they had been targeted by Jiang Pengji the moment they appeared. They were all ordinary people. Occasionally, they would daydream that they would rise to the sky and stand out from the crowd. The truth was that one of them was a bandit and the other was an errand boy in the tavern. What they all had in common was that their faces were good-looking and upright. There was no one else like them in a 5-kilometer radius. He was greedy and lazy by nature. When he was a bandit, he relied on his good looks and dared to hook up with the bandit leader's woman. Squatting in the restaurant to run errands, as soon as the age is made up of night clothes. He didn't think there was anything wrong with being a prostitute. Every day, he welcomed and sent people off. He was addicted to this kind of life, where he could enjoy wealth without having to work. It was good enough to be able to survive in troubled times. What was there to be picky about? They had thought that the days would repeat themselves, but who would have thought that fate would play a huge joke on them? The two of them lived a better life than before. They wore brocade clothes that they would never have dared to dream of in their entire lives, and became rich young masters in the eyes of outsiders. Of course, there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Everything they enjoyed had to be exchanged for. Jiang Pengji leaned against the window and looked down. She smiled and said, "They look quite similar. Even though it's a high-quality imitation, I still put a lot of effort into it." Li Yun said, "My lord, the timing of their arrival in Elephant Sun City is too sensitive. I'm afraid they have other plans." Jiang Pengji asked Li Yun, "They don't practice martial arts, and the people around them are all showy, but not practical. They don't even have the qualities to be spies. Even if there were tens of thousands of them, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Han Mei, don't worry. Just wait for the show." Although the plan to attack Yang Tao had been postponed, it did not mean that Jiang Pengji had given up. Madame Tao was willing to give her the ready-made reason. How could she refuse? A good show. Li Yun's heart skipped a beat. He did not believe a single word that his lord had said. "Is there really no need to discuss this matter with you gentlemen?" Jiang Pengji smiled. "Needless to say, we won't trouble them with such a small matter." Li Yun was speechless. He felt that these gentlemen were not afraid of trouble, because if they did not interfere, the Lord would always make simple things complicated. In the end, weren't they the ones who cleaned up the mess for their lord? At this moment, in a live streaming room, Salted Fish and Li Yun were in the same mood. Their hearts ached for the little princesses. Facts proved that Li Yun's intuition was correct. Not even 2 days after the two replicas arrived in Xianyang district, a rumor spread. Not only did it reach Li Yun's ears, it also reached the ears of Qiguan Rang and the others. Feng Jin was the first to fly into a rage. He shouted angrily, "Yang Tao and his brother are going too far." Jiang Pengji asked, "Have you found out the source of the rumors?" There was a murderous look in Wei Si's eyes. He said, "I found out that the other party claimed to be a merchant from Zhangzhou who came to Wanzhou to do business. This group of merchants brought a rumor that made the people of Wanzhou extremely angry and humiliated. The Duke of Zhengzhou, Yang Tao, searched among the people and found a young man who looked very similar to Lu Shi, the governor of Lu Province. He ordered the young man to take off his underwear and outer shirt in front of everyone and stand on the high platform naked. The people could see every inch of the young man's skin. The onlookers were dumbfounded. There were a few internet water armies hidden in the crowd. One person said, "I heard that Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, is a woman. Her chest isn't so flat." Another person said loudly, "Since she's a woman, she naturally doesn't have that big thing between her legs. She also doesn't have the ability to carry on the family line." The onlookers couldn't help but shift their fervent gazes to the area 3 inches below the young man's crotch. It was unexpectedly full of vigor. Another person jeered, "If the Duke of Lanting was a man, he would most likely look like this. It looks quite spectacular, but I wonder how big it is." The internet water armies intentionally directed the people's attention in this direction. At that moment, someone who seemed to be an official came forward and made an extremely humiliating suggestion. The people could go forward and pinch the weight of that thing if they donated 3 coins. That was a good thing that even the Duke of Lanting didn't have. The people who loved to jeer were somewhat tempted, but no one dared to be the first to step forward. It was time for someone to step forward. With someone taking the lead, the people who harbored evil intentions also went forward to weigh the weight. Someone could actually do such an absurd and disgusting act? Feng Jin and the others were furious. Even if it was a groundless rumor, they felt extremely humiliated just thinking about the scene. Their blood boiled, and they wanted to kill someone to vent their anger. Qiguan Rang and the others were furious. They couldn't wait to roll up their sleeves. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, was calm and composed. "Why are you so angry?" Feng Jin said, The subjects died when the Lord was humiliated. If we couldn't protect the Lord, how can we have the face to stand in this world? Jiang Pengji said, "That's just a rumor. It's not true. Yang Tao and the others must have been kicked in the head by thousands of donkeys to do such a thing. They have no enmity with me, and the situation in Nansheng is unstable. Why would they dare to find trouble with me at this juncture?" Everyone knew this, but they couldn't suppress the anger in their hearts. No matter who the person who spread the rumor was, the rumor was too humiliating. Lao Ciji Lianming Dam. Who came up with such a disgusting, evil plan? Just listening to it is incomparably despicable. Shushi Wugwa. Oh my god, could this be true? The streamer's psychological quality is really strong. Don't you feel disgusted? Furiously boiled frog. Who came up with this idea? Even the brainless anti-fans on the internet have to admit defeat. It's too vicious. Wei Si said, "What do you mean, my lord?" Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "I was originally curious about what kind of brilliant move Madame Tao and the others had. How could they come up with such a sinister plan? If it was someone with a bad temper, they would have been enraged and retaliated with the same method without a second word." Everyone was speechless. Their lord probably had some deviations in her temper. She made it sound as if she wasn't hot-tempered at all. Jiang Pengji continued, "I reckon that similar rumors are spreading in Zhangzhou now. For example, the Duke of Lanting, Lu Shi, searched the people and found two people who looked like Yang Tao and Yin Lin. He used his power to force them to parade naked in the streets for people to see. Madame Tao and the others did this. Were they after? Li Yun felt that he had opened the door to a new world. This operation was too scary. Jiang Pengji said, "Anyone with a discerning, I can tell at a glance that it's a rumor made up out of nothing. But the rumor is so unbearable that neither Yang Tao nor I can simply laugh it off. Not to mention anything else, the people will spread it by word of mouth. It won't be long before everyone knows about it. Even if we know it's fake, our reputation has already been trampled on. If we don't seek justice from the person in question, it's inevitable that we'll be suspected of being cowards." This era was not like the world of salted fish in the streaming room. In the world of salted fish, it didn't matter if people found out that an otaku released his life essence in front of a goddess's poster. At most, they would reveal a meaningful smile and smile at each other. This era was different. It wasn't a big deal if a high-quality imposter looked like Lu Shi, but someone pointed out that the two looked alike. Immediately after, they took off their pants and walked around naked. They even generously asked people to pay to weigh them. This was also a humiliation to the person in question. Mental humiliation. Chapter 1381. Just as Jiang Pengji expected, there was a rumor going around in Zhangzhou. The destructive power of this rumor was too great. Like a virus, it spread quickly and finally alarmed the two madams who lived in the backyard. Yang Tao married Yin Lin's sister, and Yin Lin married Yang Tao's favorite sister. The two of them were not brothers, but they were closer than brothers. This made the two madams of the inner house very close to each other, and they called each other sisters. Yin Lin assisted Yang Tao to participate in the alliance meeting against the four factions of Nanman. It was not appropriate for the two madams to go to the front line, so they naturally stayed in the safest place to wait for their husband's triumphant return. The madams in the inner house did not have much entertainment. They usually gathered together to drink tea and chat. It was quite a peaceful time. Yin Lin's sister, Yin Shirue, looked like her elder brother. With a little makeup, she was also very elegant. Although Yang Tao's sister was born of a concubine, she was extremely beautiful, and Yang Jian liked her temperament. Although she was born of a concubine, she was treated the same as if she was born of a wife. Yin Lin was not a person who valued family background. He did not neglect his wife because of her family background. The two of them also treated each other with respect. The people of Zhangzhou always said that these two couples were immortals in heaven. The man was handsome and wise, and the woman was beautiful and virtuous. They were a perfect couple, a perfect couple. However, in recent days, the tone of the conversation had changed, and the rumors and slanders outside had reached the ears of the two madams. It started when a servant accidentally knocked over a teacup and almost scalded Yang Rugia. Yin Shirui frowned and asked the servant, "You are usually careful. Why are you so impulsive today?" Although Yin Shirui was young, she was very steady. She was also very capable in managing her subordinates. None of the servants dared to be lazy or neglect her. Her voice was not harsh, but the servant knelt down and begged for mercy. Because Yang Rugia was not hurt and Yin Shirui was not a cruel person, she wanted to be gentle and punish her lightly. Unexpectedly, the servant did not watch her mouth. She accidentally said something and attracted the attention of the two madams. "What rumors?" Yin Shirui asked. The maid choked and stammered. "Recently, there have been rumors outside that after sleeping for half a day, the maid still hadn't finished her sentence." However, judging from the maid's expression, this rumor was definitely not something good. Yin Shuxian sent someone to take the maidservant away to reflect on her mistake and forfeit her pay. She turned around and summoned her trusted aide to go out and gather information. It was fine if it was a small matter, but if it was a big matter, she couldn't let her guard down. "Have you heard any rumors?" Compared to Yin Shushuan's house, Yang Rugia went out more frequently. She might have heard some rumors. The latter shook his head, and his face was filled with confusion. Not long after, the confidant ran back with a face full of fear. His footsteps hurried and panicked. Madam, there really are scoundrels spreading rumors and maliciously slandering master." Yin Shuyao said, "Nanny, don't be in a hurry. Speak slowly." The dowry nanny caught her breath and hurriedly said, "Just now, this old servant went to inquire about the news and heard that someone was framing master in Dalong." Yin Shushue was surprised. "Framing my husband and brother? Who would be so bold?" The dowry nanny recounted what she had heard. Yin Shushue and Yang Rujia's pretty faces darkened with anger. The Tao family spread the news that Yang Tao had used an impostor to humiliate Jiang Pengji in Wanzhou. The same thing happened in Zhangzhou. The Duke of Lanting, Lu Shi, was drunk at a banquet. In his drunken stupor, he mocked men for being gay and even used Yang Tao and Yin Lin as examples. Zhangzhou's Yang Jian was a good man when he was alive. Who would have thought that his only son, Yang Tao, was an absurd boy with a golden appearance but a rotten heart? Everyone didn't understand. How is Yang Tao absurd? Under further questioning, the Duke of Lanting said he and Yin Lin claimed to be brothers, but in fact, they were sworn brothers. They married each other's sisters, and they didn't find it disgusting. "I heard that both of your wives are outstanding beauties. I wonder how it feels to be treated coldly by your husband and to be alone in your room." If these words came out of the mouth of an ordinary person, they would have lost their life. But the person who spoke was the Duke of Lanting, Lu Shi. Gossip was more real than pearls. After 3 rounds of drinking, the Duke of Lanting was already dead drunk. She spoke arrogantly again and mocked in front of everyone. Yang Tao and his wife are gay. I wonder if the 2 lonely wives also wear sunglasses to amuse themselves? This family is really funny. Old Yang Jian died with his eyes wide open. What was a mirror sharpening? When 2 men fall in love, they are gay. When 2 women fall in love, they are mirror sharpening. The 2 women are intimately attached to each other and get satisfaction from touching each other's bodies. Because women's body structure is the same, when they fall in love, there is a mirror between them. That's why lesbians are called mirror sharpening. Not only did the Duke of Lanting talk nonsense at the banquet, but when he woke up the next day, he sent people to search everywhere. He found 2 people who looked exactly like Yang Tao and Yin Lin. He said in front of everyone, "I've only heard what a gay man is, but I've never seen one before. Why don't you take off your clothes in front of everyone to show me what it means to be gay?" It's better to have fun together than to have fun alone. After you've performed in front of me, you'll have to go out and show the people what a gay man is. After saying that, the 2 imitations took off their clothes and touched each other. They were intimate and had sex in front of everyone. They were very happy. Not only that, but they were also drugged and thrown out on the street for people to watch. The 2 of them showed their ugliness. They were like animals who only knew how to copulate. The details were unbearable to watch. When the dowry nanny blurted out the rumors, the two young madams almost fainted from anger. I've always heard my husband talk about Lu Shi. He said that he was an upright, open-minded, and easygoing person. I didn't expect my husband to be wrong about him. He's a shameless person who is worse than a pig or a dog. Yin Shushue caught her breath. Her face was pale, and her lower abdomen was still aching. Seeing this, the dowry nanny hurriedly called for the doctor to prescribe some medicine to stabilize the pregnancy. Yang Rujia was also so angry that her face turned green. However, she was more worried about Yin Shushue's health. Not only was Yin Shushue her close friend, but she was also her sister-in-law. Yang Rujia asked, "This matter has become so big. Why didn't we hear anything about it before?" "This matter hasn't been thoroughly investigated, so I didn't dare to bring it up in front of the two madams." Yin Shushue asked with a pale face, "Where did this rumor come from?" After asking carefully, the two discovered that the source of this rumor was a group of merchants who claimed to be from Wanzhou and came to Zhangzhou to do business. "This doesn't seem right." Yin Shushue shook her head. "It's a long journey from Wanzhou to Zhangzhou. Could it be that this group of merchants didn't even celebrate the new year and hurriedly brought their goods along? Now that the spring plowing has just passed, there's no business in the two places. Their excuse is very contradictory." Hearing this, Yang Rujia's anger subsided a lot. She said to the manager, "Why don't we detain these people first and interrogate them to find out who's behind them? I don't believe that their mouths can be tougher than the torture tools in the prison." Chapter 1382. Unlike the Reign of Terror in Zhangzhou, the situation in Wanzhou was much calmer. Jiang Pingji found a random reason to send the two counterfeits back to their hometown for reincarnation. She ordered her subordinates to reel in the fish. The Tao family has been jumping around for too long. Jiang Pingji held a thin bamboo stick in her mouth and acted like an overbearing president. "It's getting cold. It's time to go bankrupt." Yang Si and the others didn't have any objections. Anyway, it wasn't the first time that their lord had gone crazy and was unreliable. On the other hand, Li Yun was honest and picked out the mistakes in her words. "My lord, the spring plowing has just ended. The weather will get hotter and hotter." Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes at him and said, "Han Mei, there's a generation gap between us. You don't even understand the jokes of young people." Li Yun, he was indeed a few years older than the lord, but it wasn't so exaggerated that there was a generation gap, right? Yang Si smiled and teased. "Han Mei indeed doesn't look like a young man." Li Yun was at a loss. Suddenly, he had the illusion that he was out of time. Yang Si said, "Didn't Layman Zaiki come out with a new story some time ago? In the book, there was a sentence, 'The weather has turned cold. Let the Wang Corporation go bankrupt.'" It sounded strange, but after thinking about it carefully, it was very interesting. I didn't expect my lord to also be a fan of Zaiki and like his books. Jiang Pengji said, "Of course I like Zaiki. I admire him from head to toe." Speaking of which, Wei Si's new book was written by her and him together. However, her only contribution was the nonsensical "It's getting cold. Let the Wang Group go bankrupt." She thought that it was a string of witty remarks, but Wei Si expressed his disdain. "Sai, Zixiao, you don't love me anymore." Jiang Pengji squatted beside him and stared at him, hoping that he would add that sentence. Wei Si was at his wit's end. In the end, he suffered a crushing defeat and abandoned his armor. Therefore, this sentence, which was regarded as the first generation of internet slang by later generations, was recorded in the history books. Other than the title of the founder of the realistic school of darkness, Wei Si also gained the title of Pippi Si. It was only because more and more mischievous and interesting golden sentences appeared in his later works that he could be called an ancient internet expert. Wei Si, don't talk nonsense. Madame Tao and others were waiting for the good news happily. Unexpectedly, the good news didn't come. Bad news came one after another. When the aristocratic families annexed the people's land, their hands and feet were usually dirty. Jiang Pengji could investigate them thoroughly. Because of the large number of people in the clan, The quality of the clansmen was not uniform, so it was not rare for the Tao clan's descendants to do something that angered the heavens and the people. No matter which clansman did it, in the end, the entire clan would have to bear the blame. Jiang Pingji did not accuse Madame Tao and the others of the crime of selling illicit salt. Instead, she chose other crimes that had nothing to do with salt affairs. Even so, the result was that the carrot was dragged into the mud. There were more than 30 scattered crimes. As the head of this interest group, Tao enjoyed the most benefits and was found to have committed the most crimes. Jiang Pengji was determined to be ruthless. Naturally, she would not give them time to escape or react. Madame Tao and others kept a lot of private troops, but most of them were ordinary people who had never seen blood. They looked strong, and they could scare the common people. But when they faced the elites under Jiang Pengji's command, they would be sent to their deaths. It didn't take long for them to surround Madame Tao's residence. The clansmen and servants who didn't know what was going on were flustered. The crying of children and women drifted into the high walls of the inner residence and into Madame Han's ears. Madame Han lived in the inner residence and almost never went out. At this time, she was also alarmed. She looked a little worried. She asked her personal maid what happened outside. The maid cried. She didn't know whether she was crying for the future of her master or for her own life. I heard that Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, sent troops to confiscate the house. Madam, what should we do now? Hearing this, Madame Han only felt a buzzing sound in her head, as if something had exploded one after another. The explosion made her deaf. After a while, she regained her senses. What confiscation? The maid couldn't explain clearly, but it was an indisputable fact that the Tao family's residence was surrounded. Madame Han's expression changed. She suddenly got up from her seat and was about to leave when she heard a flurry of footsteps. When she went out, she saw rows of armored soldiers with guns in their hands entering the residence. How dare you? Madame Han was furious. She couldn't help but yell at the ruffian soldiers for their actions. Who allowed you to enter without permission? The leader of the soldiers asked politely. May I know who this madam is? Are you a guest or a member of the Tao family? Madame Han didn't answer. Instead, she asked, Why did you enter without permission? The leader said, Madame Tao is plotting a rebellion and framed the governor. I am under orders to arrest the criminal. When Madame Han heard this, she was so angry that she almost fainted. If you want to frame someone, you can always find a pretext. She swallowed down the taste of iron in her throat and scolded. The Tao family has been here for generations, and they have survived through the chaos. Why would they want to rebel at this time? It's obvious that Lu Lanting is coveting other people's private property and is using it as an excuse to take it by force. The world's most vicious bandit is none other than Lu Lanting. All of you are just helping her. The soldiers were polite at first. Although they were confiscating the residence, they didn't take the initiative to force anyone, nor did they smash anything. Compared to the previous examples, they were more refined and courteous. They didn't expect to be scolded so harshly even though they were so polite. It was one thing to scold them, but this crazy woman even scolded the Lord. This was intolerable. There was no need to tolerate it anymore. Arrest them all. Madame Han was just an ordinary woman. How could she compete with an adult man? While the two sides were arguing, Xie voice was heard. What are you doing? Did you forget the Lord's order not to use force on women? Everyone stopped fighting and bowed to Xie. Xie knew Madame Han and bowed to her for Han Yu's sake. Madame Han, please don't get in my way. Madame Tao is guilty and the evidence is irrefutable. Madame Han was stubborn and wouldn't listen to him. Xie had no choice but to use the Tao family to threaten Madame Han to cooperate with him. Madame Han was so angry that her face turned pale. Xie was also helpless. He didn't care about anyone else's opinion except for Madame Han. If they disobeyed, he would use force and take them away. How could he use force on Madame Han? Even if they divorced, Madame Han was still Mr. Han Yu's legal wife. Xie couldn't be rude to Madame Han for the sake of her reputation. Madame Han was sent to the womenfolk. The sisters-in-law, and sisters-in-law stared at her with burning eyes. They didn't forget that Madame Han got into trouble after she returned home. What surprised Madame Han even more was that as soon as she was locked in, before she could even ask her mother how she was, her mother took the initiative to slap her. The slap caused her right ear to ring and half of her face to swell up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 1383. Madame Han's eyes were filled with disbelief. The woman in front of him with messy hair and pale cheeks, who seemed to have aged more than 10 years overnight, was she really his mother? In Madame Han's memory, her mother was dignified and gentle. She was dignified and generous to outsiders, and virtuous and steady to her family. Madame Tao was well managed by her. From her father to servants, no one dared not to respect her mother. Her mother also lived a glamorous life. Wherever she went, she was a model praised by others. Whether it was her background, appearance, knowledge, or self-restraint, she was perfect. Her hair was always meticulously combed and decorated with pearls and turtles. Wherever she went, she was the center of attention. Under her mother's guidance and influence, Madame Han unconsciously integrated her mother's style into her bones. Now, her mother, who had always been perfect, rushed up and slapped her like a shrew. It was undoubtedly destroying her perfect image in Madame Han's mind. Because she was too shocked, she did not come back to herself. Instead, she raised her hand to cover the swollen half of her face. "Mother, mother." Madame Han took 2 steps back and looked at Madame Tao sadly. "When did I do such a thing?" Madame Han felt that she was wronged. She had always been arrogant, but she looked weak and helpless in front of her mother. Madame Tao slapped her out of anger. She regretted it on impulse. But how could she apologize to her daughter? Besides, she also believed that Madame Han was a traitor. Otherwise, why didn't she divorce at other times, but at this sensitive time? Madame Tao had high cheekbones, a narrow forehead, and not plump skin. She looked a little mean. Usually, she could use makeup to cover her shortcomings, but now she did not. Madame Tao's face was so fierce, and she looked very strange. Hearing Madame Han's wronged explanation, her daughter-in-law spoke before Madame Tao could speak. "Are you saying that I wronged you?" Madame Tao was very capable in the inner courtyard. She had children born by her legal wife. Although there were children born by concubines, they had to live under her nose. The daughter-in-law who spoke was the youngest son's wife. She had been married for less than half a year. She had thought that she could help her relatives when she married into the family. She did not expect her husband's family to be so disappointing. They were in trouble in just half a year. Not only did he lose his wealth, but he had also become a prisoner. He was indescribably angry. She wouldn't blame Madame Tao for being greedy and occupying the salt business. She could only aim at Madame Han, who stayed at home peacefully. Before Madame Han came, the sisters-in-law pushed all the anger onto Madame Han with just a few words. Otherwise, Madame Tao wouldn't have walked up to her daughter and slapped her in front of everyone. "I am innocent," Madame Han said. "What does Lu Shi's actions have to do with me?" "It's not an auspicious separation," one of the sisters-in-law said. "Isn't it because you went back to your parents' home that you brought trouble to your parents' home?" Madame Han was enraged as well. She blurted out, "You're twisting words and forcing logic. Wasn't Lu Shi targeting the Tao residence because of the salt affair?" Even though she was a lady from the inner residence, Madame Han wasn't truly ignorant. She knew why Jiang Pengji wanted to deal with the Tao family. Wasn't it because of the salt business that the Tao family and other aristocratic families had seized? However, Jiang Pengji did not dare to tell him the real reason, so she made up a false accusation of conspiracy to rebel. What they didn't know was that Jiang Pengji's accusation of punishing Madame Tao and the others were real. As a lady from the inner residence, Madame Han didn't have the means to know what the other clansmen were doing. As soon as she finished speaking, Madame Tao, who had calmed down a little, gave Madame Han another loud slap. "Evil girl." Madame Tao gritted her teeth and said, "You're indeed a traitor." The Tao family and the other aristocratic families had seized the salt business for too long. It had been so long that they regarded the business as private property. Madame Han's words undoubtedly exposed the ambition and greed of the aristocratic families. How could Madame Tao not be angry? After 2 consecutive slaps, the corner of Madame Han's mouth was bleeding. Both sides of her cheeks were swollen. She looked extremely embarrassed. "Mother, why are you like this? What did I do wrong?" Madame Han finally couldn't help but cry. The smell of iron in her mouth made her feel nauseous. The people in front of her were her relatives. Her mother was an elder she relied on and respected. She couldn't even recognize her mother's face now. Madame Tao was still angry. She shouted, "Get lost! The Tao family doesn't have an unfilial daughter like you." The commotion alerted the female soldiers who were guarding them. They came in to take a look and immediately reported the matter to their superiors. Sieze brought people over. Dozens of female prisoners in the prison were on guard when they saw the opposite sex. In ancient times, once a woman was in prison, she basically couldn't keep her chastity. Many jailers were so evil that they bullied and humiliated the female prisoners. But this time, the jailers were temporarily played by female soldiers, which brought a sense of security to the women. Seeing a bunch of men, their relaxed nerves instantly tensed up. Sieze brought people over. He looked around and found Madame Han in a sorry state. He suddenly felt embarrassed. "Someone, open the door," Sieze said to Madame Han. "I didn't think it through just now. I let you stay in the same cell with these unruly people. Please forgive me, Madame Han." He thought that since Madame Han was Madame Tao's daughter, it would be fine if they were thrown together. Who knew that she would be beaten the moment she arrived? Even though Madame Han and Han Yu had divorced, she still couldn't be humiliated by just anyone. Madame Han stared at Sieze. She glanced at the other female prisoners in the prison and then at her mother, who was gritting her teeth. She suddenly raised her hand to cover her face and ran out, sobbing. Sieze looked embarrassed. He asked someone to arrange a clean single cell for Madame Han. Sieze asked Madame Han, "When this is over, will I escort Madame back?" Madame Han said, "Now that you are in such a situation, people will laugh at you when you go back." Sieze said, "Although Madame and you are not fated to be together, you are still the birth mother of the 2 young masters." After he finished speaking, Madame Han cried even harder. It seemed that she wanted to vent all the grievances she had suffered these days. In the words of the audience in the live broadcast room, Madame Han should have played the trump card badly. Who could she blame? Sieze was worried that Madame Han would take things too hard. He specially arranged for female soldiers to guard her so that she wouldn't commit suicide. Sieze arrested all the people and confiscated all the properties of the families. When he saw the annual salt accounts of the families, he couldn't help but gasp when he saw the rough figures. His lord was very generous to the soldiers in the military camp. The amount of military expenses allocated every year could be said to be an astronomical figure. This didn't even include the pensions for the deceased soldiers. If the families made a list of military expenses, his lord would definitely be at the top of the list, far ahead of the second place. When he looked at the account book, he finally understood what the lord often talked about meant by the picture of a broken account. Chapter 1384. The Tao family's net profit from the salt business last year was equivalent to 2 years of military expenses. If the profits from the salt business of other aristocratic families were included, it would be equivalent to 5 years of military expenses. If they occupied the salt business for a whole year, it would be enough for Jiang Pengji to train her troops for 4 to 5 years. No wonder Madame Tao and the others refused to give in. This kind of profit is really tempting. Xia Zhe sighed softly. He sent people to seal the account books and all the money and assets that had been plundered and sent them to Wanzhou. In front of Madame Tao, the Lord's private treasury was indeed extremely poor. Sieze didn't deliberately humiliate the captured prisoners, but he didn't give them preferential treatment either. These people had suffered a lot along the way. Before they fell from the horse, they were all nobles who didn't have to do any chores. They had to eat a year's worth of food for an ordinary family. They spent money like water when they held a small banquet. Now they had to travel on foot with only simple straw sandals or clogs. Madame Han didn't suffer much. For Han Yu's sake, She could take a carriage and eat 2 vegetables and 1 meat for 3 meals a day. The others were miserable. They only had 2 meals a day. They ate coarse steamed buns and dry, hard cakes. On the first day, they wore out a pair of straw sandals. On the second day, their soles were full of blisters. On the third day, their calves were swollen. Madame Han couldn't bear to see her parents suffer, so she left food for them in private. Unexpectedly, they didn't appreciate it. Instead, they knocked over the table and splashed soup and water all over her. Madame Han's heart grew colder. She hardened her heart and didn't care about them anymore. On the 5th day, her parents took the initiative to find her, hoping that she could take care of their young nephews. Madame Tao's parents still hated Madame Han, but they showed a bit of sadness on their faces. Madame Han was moved by it. Your father and I are old. It doesn't matter if we die, but our children are still young. They can't bear this hardship. Madame Tao wiped her tears and said, Madame Tao needs to rely on them in the future. They can't suffer any losses. I was wrong before. I was angry and did something ridiculous. You were wronged. But how can a family hate each other overnight? Your nephews can't be hurt. Madame Han wanted to refuse, but she couldn't persuade her parents. She secretly hid her nephews in the carriage. When Xieze heard about this, he decided to turn a blind eye to it. He sent someone to increase Madame Han's diet by a few %. The Tao family had a large business and many people. Madame Han had 3 nephews and 4 nieces. However, Mother Tao only let her 3 grandchildren sit in the carriage. She didn't care about her granddaughter who had a fever or cold. Xieze was soft-hearted and couldn't stand it anymore, so he ordered people to prepare 2 carriages for children under the age of 7. The team had yet to reach Xiangyang district in Wanzhou, but the news of Jiang Pengji confiscating the properties of the aristocratic families had spread like wildfire. The relationship between Jiang Pengji and the aristocrats was not harmonious. The matter, Jiang Pengji's relationship. Under the instigation of these people, Jiang Pengji's reputation for being tyrannical and greedy slowly spread among the people. For her own selfish desires, she fabricated groundless charges to confiscate other people's property. She had confiscated Madame Tao's family's property today. If she was short of money tomorrow, would she confiscate other people's property? Some people deliberately made up a song to mock her. Even the false news spread by Madame Tao was used by them to attack Jiang Pengji. Wei Ci could only fight back slightly to show his respect when he encountered such inferior means. Make up a song? Isn't it shameful to use such an old method of public opinion? Showing one's slight skill in front of an expert is a joke. Wei Ci was inspired. He took out a new piece of rice paper and worked all night to write a new book. At the same time, he also sent a storyteller under the name of the government to refute the rumors and explain the crimes of Madame Tao and the others. Under Wei Ci's management, his team of public opinion had begun to take shape. The brainwashing power of the Water Army was increasing day by day. Whether it was the efficiency of publicity, the scope of dissemination, or the audience, the haters in the dark were far from Wei Ci. He is indeed the chief instructor of the 8 million Water Army. Zixiao's public opinion is really manly. Before the dirty and smelly rumors reached Jiang Pengji's ears, the flames were extinguished by Wei Ci's Water Army. Lao Ciji Lianmeng. I can't afford to offend him. Zixiao's fighting power is too strong. Weilong spicy strips. Simi is so loyal to the streamer. Blue drawer. Other girls' boyfriends never let me down. The more I look at them, the more envious I am. Meet you 21 years old. If the host made her debut, I feel that Ci Marin alone could tear apart all the fans in the entertainment industry. Hanya Ningming, Sai, 3 books in half a year. The author I'm following is half as hardworking as Beauty Ci. I can wake up from my dreams with a smile. Jiang Pengji looked at the bullet screen in the streaming room and laughed. She liked it when people praised Wei Ci to the skies. Who said that a strong man was considered a man? Zixiao was also not bad. He could just leave the rest to her. Time passed in a flash. Xieze safely escorted the criminal back to Xiangyang district. Even though Su Ku had made thorough preparations and emptied a few warehouses, he still couldn't store all the confiscated property. I have never seen the greed of Madame Tao and the others. With such wealth, not to mention Dongqing, there might not be another family in the 5 countries that could compete with them. Jiang Pingji flipped through the account book. The more she read, the gloomier her face became. Madame Tao and the others were greedier than she had imagined. Salt was an essential item in the daily life of the people. It was consumed very quickly. Madame Tao and the other gentry monopolized salt. They raised the price at will. The quality of salt could not be guaranteed. It was often mixed with sand or something else. There were even a series of poisoning cases in some places. Unfortunately, Madame Tao and the others had great power and power. The people had no way to redress their grievances. Jiang Pengji said, "Xiaoyu, thank you for your hard work these few days." Su Ku was the chief housekeeper. These things were his job. Su Ku agreed on the surface, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. He had to ask his wife, Xu Mei, to prepare bedding and mats for overtime. He might not be able to go back for a few days. Xieze handed over the criminal to Han Yu and went to Han Yu's house. Since the divorce, Han Yu spent less and less time at home. He spent most of his time outside. Even when he returned home, he mostly stayed in his own courtyard. Occasionally, he would visit his 2 concubines. Xieze's visit this time was unsurprisingly fruitless. Instead, he bumped into Han Run and the others who had just finished school. "Uncle Xie, why are you looking for my father?" After his mother's setback, Han Run looked much more mature. There is also a hint of determination between his eyebrows that should not be present at his age. Xieze said awkwardly, "Yes, but it's a bit difficult." Han Run said, "My father will be back in 7 days at the latest. If there's anything important, why don't you tell me and I will pass it on for you?" Xieze sighed and said, "This matter has something to do with your mother." Han Run's hand paused. He almost lost his composure. "What happened to my mother?" Chapter 1385. Seeing Xieze's hesitation, Han Run quickly said, "Uncle Xie, please tell me what happened to my mother." Even though Madame Han and Han Yu had divorced, she was still Han Run's biological mother. It was impossible for Han Run not to care about her. "Don't worry, Lang Jun. It's not what you think." Xieze comforted the panicked and worried Han Run and said, "A while ago, the Lord ordered us to investigate the Tao family. Coincidentally, Long Jun's mother was also living in the Tao mansion. Therefore, she was also involved." Han Run's face turned pale after hearing this. His lips were pale because of the blood loss. He looked like he was going to faint at any time. "Thank you, uncle," Han Run called out in a small voice. His teary eyes were filled with a few pleading words. Xieze said, "Don't worry. Even if it's not for the monk's sake, it's for the Buddha's sake. Madame Han is Mr. Han's legal wife, after all. She can't be treated as an ordinary prisoner. I sent people to take care of her along the way. Although it wasn't as meticulous as usual, she didn't suffer much." When Han Run heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief and solemnly bowed to Xieze. If it wasn't for Xieze's care, Han Run could imagine the suffering his mother might have suffered. The Tao family was Han Run's maternal family. Xieze was worried that the child didn't understand the situation and hated the wrong person, so he couldn't help but say a few words. If it weren't for Madame Tao and the others' greed, occupying the salt business and plotting rebellion, our Lord wouldn't have been so ruthless. Han Run nodded dejectedly. "Grandfather and the others brought this upon themselves. I know that. I'm relieved now that you've said that." An obedient and sensible child was especially likable. Xieze had a much better impression of Han Run. He said, "About your mother, she will probably be fine for your father's sake, but it's hard to say for the Tao family." Han Run said, "Uncle Xie's words make me feel much more at ease. Where's my mother now?" Even if he couldn't save his mother, he could at least make her live a better life. Xieze said, "She's in prison. If you go to see her, remember to ask someone to prepare some clean clothes, bedding, money, and food. Even if someone arranged a clean single room for her. The inshi in the prison is heavy, and the woman's physique is on the cold side, so it's easy for her to fall sick after a long time. Sieze had even considered all of this. It was clear how attentive and gentle he was. Han Run's eyes welled up as he listened. Han Run did not delay. As soon as Sieze left, he ordered the housekeeper to prepare the necessities. Because Jiang Pengji paid a lot of attention to hygiene, even in the dungeon, she had to maintain a certain level of cleanliness. Therefore, the situation in the dungeon was better than Han Run had imagined. Accompanied by the housekeeper, Han Run reported his father's name and was led into the women's cell by the female prison guard. I don't have much time, only an hour. If there's anything, please tell me as soon as possible. The jailers of the women's prison were female soldiers who had retired from the women's battalion due to injuries. Even if they couldn't fight as well as they used to, it wasn't a problem for them to guard a few women and children. Not only was there a time limit for relatives to visit the prisoners, but there must also be 2 prison guards present to prevent any trouble. Han Run said, "Thank you very much. I will be careful." After a while, Mrs. Han was brought in. "Mother," Han Run called out and hurriedly bowed. Mrs. Han stopped in her tracks. She had some thoughts of retreating. She wished she could cover her face so that her son would not see her in such a sorry state. With a mother whose house had been confiscated and who had been imprisoned, her Run and she must be in an awkward situation in the Han residence. "Mother? What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Your son will call the doctor over to take a look." Mrs. Han pulled him back and said shyly, "Your mother is fine." Mother and son should have had endless things to talk about when they met, but the timing was awkward. Mrs. Han looked at her son, who had lost a lot of weight. She felt some regret in her heart. She really shouldn't have let her emotions affect her decisions. She shouldn't have abandoned her 2 young sons for a moment of pride. In a moment of haste, your son took 2 sets of bedding and clothes that you used to use. I'll just ask the prison guard to send them to you. Han Run picked up the box of food that had been placed at the side. "These are your favorite dishes, but the family has changed cooks. I don't know if the dishes are to your liking. If you like them, I will send someone to deliver them every day." The more Mrs. Han looked, the sadder she became. She wanted to find a hole to hide in and never come out again. Han Run continued, "The bottom of the box is silver. Mother, you can use it to bribe the prison guards. If there are any snacks you want, you can send them to buy them. Mother, don't be in a hurry to refuse. Grandmother and the others, they also need to take care of them. They're getting old." Madame Tao was looking for trouble. He couldn't do too much to prevent his father from being implicated. He had given the silver to his mother. Whether his mother would take care of Madame Tao or not was none of his business. Mrs. Han couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The red veins in her eyes were soaked with tears. "Run has really grown up. It's a pity that your mother is not good enough. Not only did I not help you, but I also dragged you and your brother down." She could only be glad that Han Yu was a reliable man. He also promised that he wouldn't marry his second wife, so that the 2 legitimate sons wouldn't have a bad life in the Han residence. If Han Yu married someone else and had a new legitimate son in the future, the first 2 legitimate sons would be the 2 most embarrassed people in the entire Han residence. Han Run said, "Mother, don't say that. As long as you are well, I will be satisfied." Half an hour passed quickly. Han Run had to leave reluctantly. Mrs. Han looked at her son's back and almost burst into tears. "Why are you back?" Although Mrs. Han was in a single cell, she was not too far away from the other female members of the Tao family. They could see each other's movements. She had just been sent back by the prison guards when she heard her sister-in-law's sarcasm. Mrs. Han's lips moved. She didn't want to argue with her. "Your face looks so unlucky." Her sister-in-law continued to ridicule her. "You have already divorced Han Wenbin. I'm afraid that he is looking for a new wife to marry into the family. Why would he think of getting you out? You should give up as soon as possible so that you won't be dreaming in broad daylight. You should be envious that I have such a filial and obedient son." Mrs. Han's heart was burning with anger. She retorted sarcastically, "When this matter is solved, no matter how unlucky I am, at least I have 2 sons who will take care of me when I die. What about you? I'm afraid that you will have to live on the streets." Mrs. Tao, who was sitting on the side taking a nap, opened her tired eyes and scolded her daughter fiercely, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, cursing her eldest daughter-in-law to have no one to take care of her when she dies. Wasn't this a disguised form of cursing her to have no one to rely on and live on the streets? If the two of them were in the same cell, Mrs. Han would have been slapped again. Chapter 1386. The fact that Madame Tao and the other gentry families were imprisoned touched many people's sensitive nerves. However, before they could stir up trouble, the chief instructor of the 8 million Navy had already taught them how to behave. The rumors came and went quickly. They did not cause any damage to Jiang Pengji. Zi Xiao is really capable. He easily nipped the hidden danger in the bud. Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan lightly. Judging from the frequency of his fanning, he was getting more and more satisfied with Wei Ci. Of course he is capable. Jiang Pengji laughed. Wan Zheng cannot believe in his ability, but you should believe in my judgment. How bad could the conditions of the person she liked be? Hearing this, Qiguan Rang's feather fan suddenly stopped. He did not know whether to complain about his lord's narcissism or that she was forcefully feeding him dog food. My lord's judgment is naturally good. However, does my lord still remember that the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind? Qiguan Rang frowned and said solemnly, Zi Xiao has ruined my plans time and time again. I don't know how many people secretly bear grudges against him. Not to mention the past, just this action alone had offended many gentry families and nobles. Those people would not immediately take revenge, but they would definitely remember this grudge in their notebooks. Once Wei Ci made any mistakes, he would inevitably be faced with a storm of schemes. Even if the Lord was sincere in protecting him, Wei Ci would inevitably suffer. Jiang Pengji was not unaware of Qiguan Rang's worries, but it was too early to talk about it. The two exchanged glances and tacitly changed the topic. Qiguan Rang asked, How does my lord plan to deal with Madame Tao and the others? Deal with them as they should be. Anyway, the evidence of Madame Tao's rebellion is readily available. They can't deny it. Jiang Pengji sighed. It's unfair if the punishment is heavy, and it won't deter the rascals if the punishment is light. In my opinion, it's fair to deal with them according to the law. Qiguan Rang said, That's good, lest someone uses this to attack my lord. On the surface, Madame Tao and the others' crimes were much more serious than those gentry families in Chongzhou. If they were punished according to the old law, the main culprit would undoubtedly be executed. All male heirs within the age of 5 and older would be sent to the border, and 3 generations would not be able to become officials. This was the punishment for men. The treatment of women was relatively more lenient. Men's wives, concubines, and unmarried women were demoted to commoners. Married women were not affected. Although Madame Han was married, her husband and son-in-law were still alive, so she could be considered to have returned home peacefully, so she should be treated as an unmarried woman. This was considered benevolent. If it had been during the Dongqing period, wives, concubines, and unmarried female relatives would have been demoted to lowly status and become sinners. What was the fate of the sinful woman? Most of them became camp prostitutes until they died. Yang Si picked his teeth with a toothpick and said, Tisk, if you use the crime of embezzling the salt tax and occupying the salt business, you will at least be sentenced to death. It took Xiao Yu and his men 10 days to half a month to calculate everything. I'm afraid the amount of money is unprecedented. The laws of Dongqing were mostly studied from the previous dynasty. In the early years of the Great Xia dynasty, Prime Minister Huangfu showed no mercy to those who were corrupt in order to curb the trend of corruption. According to the amount of embezzlement and bribery, there were strict laws. If you were greedy, your face would be tattooed in public. If you were greedy, you would be exiled for 1,000 miles. If you were greedy, you would be beheaded in public. If you were greedy, you would be skinned and cut grass. In addition, there were 3 grades, 30, 50, and 100. From here on, not only would the corrupt be killed, but also their children, wives, and concubines would not be able to escape. The highest grade corresponded to the 3 clans. Not to mention how much money the other aristocratic families and nobles had embezzled, The amount of money the Tao family had extorted was 4 times the revenue of the national treasury during the heyday of Dongqing. How many times more than the highest grade of 100? Not to mention the 3 clans. It was more than enough to wipe out the 9 clans. Han Yu said expressionlessly, "It's true that it is unprecedented, but I'm not sure that it will not be repeated in the future." Yang Si couldn't help burping and continued to pick his teeth with a toothpick. Han Yu couldn't stand it anymore. Wouldn't Yang Jingrong feel embarrassed to expose such vulgar behavior in front of others? Of course, Yang Si wouldn't be embarrassed. Picking teeth after a meal was a normal after-meal pastime. Picking teeth could help relieve physical and mental stress. He said, "I heard that the eldest nephew has brought his mother over to support him." Han Yu said, "She is ambitious and arrogant. It's impossible for her to stay in Xiangyang district. Run will probably settle her in a private house in Xiangyang." Because of the divorce, Han Yu was busy with work, so he could only hand over the affairs of the house to his confidants and let his son learn to manage various industries. Han Run knew how many houses he had under his name. Comparing the location of the private houses and the local economic situation, Mrs. Han most likely went to Xiangyang County. It was better for her to go there. It was unlikely that she would meet her former bosom friends. She could live alone and feel more comfortable. Yang Si teased, "You are so bored." One is a wife who has shared the same bed for many years, and the other is a son who has been raised since childhood. How can I not understand? Han Yu said coldly, "You are done picking your teeth and full of food. It's time to help sort out the files and make comments. Don't be idle, or else I will report to the Lord." Yang Si was annoyed. Was Han Yu a 3-year-old child? He was always snitching. Did he really think that he was the reincarnation of the god of informants? "I must have owed you in my previous life to have a brother like you." His mouth was muttering, but his body was honest. He got up and started to work. He was afraid that Han Yu would snitch on him. If Han Yu snitched on him, the Lord would know that he was slacking. If the Lord knew, it meant that Jiang Nongqin, who was slowly becoming pregnant, also knew. If the two of them knew, Yang Si would be even further away from finding a girlfriend. He childishly stabbed the brush into the inkstone and stirred it for a while. After venting his anger, he continued to work hard. Han Yu sighed. Yang Si's working ability was excellent. It would be perfect if his mouth wasn't so obnoxious. Compared to the previous marriage law, which could be followed, the current child protection law was much more difficult. There were more than 1,000 files related to marriage. Han Yu could categorize the cases and propose specific protection regulations. However, there were very few files related to children. Han Yu and the others could only go deep into the towns and ask the villagers for relevant materials. Not to mention child abuse. Many places had the custom of drowning baby girls. When parents were short of money, they sold their daughters to others as slaves. During the years of famine, it was not uncommon to exchange children for food. These were all crimes, but who would stand up and accuse the parents of the children? The parents didn't think they were wrong, and the neighbors didn't think they were wrong. How many files related to the children could the government have? The children were the parents' personal property. Whether they were crippled, killed, or sold, it was none of the government's business. Looking at the collected materials, the villagers' and parents' indifferent and matter-of-fact tone stung his eyes. Yang Si glanced at Han Yu from the corner of his eye and sighed secretly. Master Yuan Jing was probably second only to Wei Si's die-hard fan. Of the 4 students he was most proud of in his life, 2 were working for Jiang Pingji, and the other was about to become an official. Chapter 1387. People couldn't stand being nagged. Yang Si had just finished talking about Lu Zheng when he, who was far away in Nansheng, sneezed. Compared to the bright situation in Dongqing, Nansheng was in a mess. Several feudal vassals formed an alliance to fight against the 4 factions of Nanman. The barbarian-slaying alliance was not comparable to the Huangshui Conference. Everyone could only let go of their former enmity and work together to deal with Nanman. No one would be a burden to the others. Even if there was intrigue, it had to be done in private. It cannot be done in the open to destroy the unity of the group. After some effort, the arrogance of the four factions of Nanman was finally contained. Both sides were in a stalemate. The barbarian-slaying alliance was well aware that the four factions of Nanman had a small population. The death of a young warrior meant a loss of combat power. Nanshan could afford it. If they could maintain the current situation, the four factions of Nanman might escape without a fight in a year. This was considered a bad plan. It was time-consuming and had certain variables. The best situation was to find a way to break the situation and frustrate the four factions of Nanman so that they would be exhausted from running for their lives. However, the four factions of Nanman had terrifying combat power. It was easier said than done. In another half a month, I'm afraid there will be a storm. Time flies. It's almost summer. Lu Zheng waved his cattail leaf fan to fan himself. The weather in Nansheng was hot. There were always a few days before summer that made people want to take off their clothes for the coolness. After a few days, it was followed by half a month of torrential rain. When the rain stopped, the temperature would rise day by day. At its hottest, staying under the sun for half a day would cause one's skin to peel. The sun was very hot. He was sitting on the stool to cool off when someone called him. Lu Zheng did not need to turn around to know who it was. He sniffed and smelled a faint smell of alcohol. Alcohol is banned in the military camp. Is Duke Zhengze breaking the law knowingly? Mr. Liu, please don't tell Xiaoyang. I'm afraid he'll complain. There are a few liquor bugs living in his stomach. If I don't drink a pot every few days to appease them, I'll be the one suffering if they don't care. Yang Tao carried 2 pots of wine and said with a smile, "Would you like a drink, sir?" Lu Zheng could not help but laugh. Yang Tao generously shared the private wine he had secretly hidden. Lu Zheng threw the remaining stool to Yang Tao to sit on. It was a coincidence that the two of them met. Lu Zheng could not sleep in the middle of the night. When he was relaxing, he ran into Yang Tao, who reeked of alcohol. After a detailed conversation, the two of them felt like old friends at first sight. Yang Tao secretly drank, but he was afraid that Yin Lin would catch him and scold him. So he had to get rid of the smell of alcohol before he dared to go back. To be honest, LV Zheng had never seen such a cowardly lord. However, Yang Tao was a brave and warlike man on the battlefield. I wonder how long this battle will last. Yang Tao drank a few mouthfuls of wine. His forehead was dripping with sweat. He felt that it was too hot, so he simply raised his hand and loosened his lapel, revealing his firm and strong pectoral muscles. One could even faintly see his tight, powerful, and beautiful abdominal muscles. Lu Zheng glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, feeling a little envious. He said, "That's hard to say. I hope it ends as soon as possible. Too many soldiers have died." Yang Tao also sighed. He tilted his head back and drank the entire pot of wine. Awesome. Some of the wine flowed from the corner of his mouth to his neck and into his chest, wetting his clothes. Lu Zheng said, "You drank so much. I'm afraid you won't be able to get rid of the smell of alcohol overnight." Yang Tao smiled. "Don't worry. I found a pond just now. I'll just go and wash up. Xiaoyang won't find out." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard familiar footsteps. The smile on his face froze. He looked pitiful and helpless. "Is this why you're still drinking when you haven't recovered from your injury?" Yinlin's father had a dangerous look in his eyes. When he saw the 2 empty wine pots next to Yang Tao, the danger level shot up. Yang Tao surrendered immediately. If Lu Zheng was not there, he would have gone up to him and begged for mercy. What else could Yin Lin do other than sigh? It's getting late. For the sake of the Lord's injury, let's go back to the tent and rest. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Tao skipped back to the tent as if he had been pardoned. "I have something to ask Mr. Liu. How much do you know about the local weather?" Yang Tao went back, but Yin Lin did not leave. Instead, he sat on Yang Tao's stool. Lu Zheng said, "The weather? Why all of a sudden?" Yin Lin said, "I have a plan that might be able to repel the 4 tribes of Nanman, but it needs a right time." Lu Zheng's expression turned serious. "I'm all ears." The two discussed for a quarter of an hour. Lu Zheng's eyes were getting brighter. Yin Lin's plan was not complicated. When the water level was low, they would block the rivers upstream. After a few days of heavy rain, the river would overflow. The temporary dam would collapse, and the 4 tribes of Nanman would be drowned. To do this, they would have to find a way to lure the 4 tribes to the lower part of the river. Although the 4 tribes of Nanman were reckless, they were familiar with the environment. It would not be easy to trick them. Besides, the timing was also a problem. If they did not do it right, they might even drown their own people. If the plan worked, the morale of the Nanman people would be greatly affected. The next day, Lu Zheng tried to protect Yanlin. Then, he got the support of Hua Yuan and the others. Seeing this, all the feudal lords agreed to the plan. After a month of careful planning, the alliance took advantage of the 4 tribes of Nanman's eagerness to make a contribution and trick them into taking the bait. When a mountain torrent broke out, tens of thousands of the enemy troops were drowned in the river. The alliance took advantage of the victory and pursued. They killed 30,000 enemies and captured 50,000 captives. Several rivers were stained red by the enemy's corpses. The downstream was blocked. How to deal with the 50,000 captives was another problem. The alliance did not even have enough food for themselves. How could they have extra food to feed the captives? What's so difficult about that? Just kill them all. At this moment, Hua Yuan, who was next to Shui, spoke up. He wanted to kill all 50,000 captives. When he spoke, there was a fierce look in his eyes. His murderous aura was no less than that of an ordinary general. The feudal lords had the same plan, but it was still 50,000 lives. If they said it out loud, it would make them seem cold-blooded. Now that Hua Yuan was the first to bring it up, they agreed and ordered the slaughter of the 50,000 captives. But Lu Zheng did not agree. The alliance was short of food, but Shui was not. What value could these 50,000 captives have? Hua Yuan seemed to notice Lu Zheng's emotions. He glanced at him coldly, his eyes full of warning. Seeing this situation, Lu Zheng finally understood that his colleague's illness was acting up again. Mr. Lu Zheng was about to return to his tent when he was stopped by Hua Yuan. The other party was still full of murderous aura. He looked at Lu Zheng with a malicious look. What is it? Lu Zheng pretended to be calm. Hua Yuan laughed grimly. Mr. Lu, you might lose your life if you show mercy to the Nanman captives. If Wei Ci was here, he would recognize Hua Yuan in front of him as Golin, who had almost strangled him in his previous life. Chapter 1388. Although the southern barbarians are cruel, they are not without value. Lu Zheng said unhappily, our lord's military strength is not superior among the feudal lords. If we can tame these captives and let them fight for our lord, it will be a great help. Even if they're not willing to be used by our lord, these strong barbarians are also rare labor. Quarrying stones, paving roads, reclaiming wasteland. These all require manpower. In troubled times, one could not dominate the world just because they could fight. They also needed to build and manage. Being militaristic was not the right way. Indiscriminately killing captives was even worse. Unless it was a special situation, such as a lack of food and fodder in the army and having to kill captives, under normal circumstances, the captives would be treated as cheap labor and their remaining value would be squeezed out. They would be arranged to do whatever physical work was heavy, using the cheapest investment in exchange for the most generous returns. Killing all the captives without hesitation would result in the enemy fighting to the death. Since they would die if they surrendered anyway, they might as well fight to the death. Was there any other meaning other than stimulating the enemy to fight to the death? I don't need you to lecture me on these principles. Hearing this, Gulin's lips curled into a cold smile. You come from Dongqing. The northern borderline army was strangled by Lu Shi before they could wreak havoc everywhere. Of course, you can't empathize with them. Which of the people of Nanxing doesn't hate the southern barbarians? The southern barbarians being alive is the greatest disrespect to the dead. Not to mention killing 50,000 captives today. Even if it was 500,000 captives, we would not be lenient. Your father and son were not beheaded by the southern barbarians and hung on the backs of horses to show off. Your mother and wife were not humiliated and ridiculed by the southern barbarians one after another. You haven't experienced these, so how can you know the hatred of a destroyed country and family? Galin's words could be regarded as a humiliation. Even Lu Zheng couldn't help but feel a little angry. Why you on? He shouted angrily. Galin said sarcastically, just a few words and you're already angry. Lu Zheng did not notice the faint murderous intent in Galin's eyes. Without waiting for him to make a move, Yang Tao shouted at LV Zheng from far away. Galin glared at LV Zheng unwillingly. In a trance, Galin went offline in a second, and the main personality was pushed out. Yang Tao looked at Hua Yuan's back and frowned. Mr. Lu, please be careful. Lu Zheng did not understand. What does Duke Xingzi mean by this? Yang Tao said, just now, that person wanted to kill you. If I hadn't shouted, I'm afraid. Naturally, he didn't say this to sow discord. Yang Tao was a forthright and righteous person. He had a lot of things, but he was too little scheming. Lu Zheng's pupils constricted, and he said hesitantly, he's a colleague after all. How could he dare to kill someone so brazenly? Yang Tao replied, that's hard to say. That Hua Yuan gave off a strange feeling. It was as if he had suddenly become a different person. According to his understanding, Hua Yuan was a standard scholar. His horsemanship and archery skills were not good either. Where did he get his murderous aura from? That kind of killing intent could only be possessed by martial artists who had been on the battlefield for many years. Lu Zheng did not mention that Hua Yuan had lost his mind, but he was still on guard. After all, the behavior of a lunatic could not be measured by common sense. This great victory became a watershed in the war between the barbarian-slaying alliance and the four factions of Nanman. The former became stronger as they fought, while the latter gradually retreated. Every time they failed, thousands of young men from the four factions of Nanman were captured. Without exception, they all died. As the war entered a white-hot stage, what Lu Zheng was most worried about still happened. The attitude of the alliance towards the captives inspired the four factions of Nanman to fight to the death. With the death of a large number of young men, barbarian women, and young children also went to the front line. This made the alliance stop in its tracks. Even so, the allied vassals still stubbornly insisted on using the strategy of killing all the captives. Yang Tao wanted to object, but more than half of his men were from Nansheng. As the Lord, he could not ignore their opinions. In just 2 months, the number of Nanman captives killed was close to 150,000. In the blink of an eye, it was midsummer. The scorching sun made the alliance soldiers suffer. The four factions of Nanman, which were initially weak, became more and more courageous as they fought. The scales that were originally leaning towards the alliance slowly tilted towards the four factions of Nanman. Yinlin was not optimistic about the current situation. At this rate, if the alliance continues to be stubborn, the four factions of Nanman will definitely fight back. Yang Tao looked solemn. It's hard to say. The alliance's casualties have skyrocketed in the past few battles. It's extremely disadvantageous for us. The four factions of Nanman were already brutal in their fighting style. Now that they had the buff of facing death, their combat power skyrocketed. This created a very awkward situation. The weakened four factions of Nanman were harder to deal with than before. Sometimes Yang Tao did not understand. What was the alliance doing this for? Killing all the Nanman captives to avenge the people of Nansheng. But in the end, more innocent lives were lost. The alliance's bad luck did not stop there. After a thunderstorm, some soldiers developed headaches, nausea, diarrhea, and other symptoms. At first, the military doctors thought that a small number of soldiers were not accustomed to the climate. After a few days, more and more soldiers fell ill. Some even died from diarrhea. Only then did everyone realize that something was wrong. However, the illness had already spread and many people were infected. They had no choice but to gather the sick soldiers together to take care of them. However, their conditions did not improve at all. Soldiers died every day. No one knew where the source of the epidemic was. No, there was one person who might know. Hua Yuan leaned against the tent to avoid the heat. His cold eyes seemed to be dipped in venom. Even the temperature of the surrounding air was lower than elsewhere. If Lu Zheng was here, he would know that his colleague had lost his mind again. That's right. The personality that was online now was Hua Yuan's elder brother, the guy who cheated Huang Song of millions of dana food. Sir, I've finished reading. Besides himself, and Chui's heir was also in Hua Yuan's tent. He was the legitimate young master. The youth looked at Hua Yuan with hesitation in his eyes. Sir, there's something I don't understand. Hua Yuan glanced at him and asked, what is it? Recently, the epidemic has been rampant in the camp. Do you think it has something to do with the Alliance's drinking water? The youth said hesitantly. It's not just our army that has a widespread epidemic. According to the scouts, the Nanman tribes are also showing similar symptoms. If not for that, the four factions of Nanman would have taken advantage of the Alliance's weakened combat power to counterattack. Why do you think so? Hua Yuan asked. Previously, I followed you to Dongqing's Lanting Duke to discuss the alliance. The youth said, I found out that the water in their camp can only be drunk after boiling. Food is also cooked in hot water before eating. In the casualty camp, the water used to clean the wounds of the soldiers is also repeatedly boiled. I asked out of curiosity, and the other party said that this was a rule set by Lanting Duke. Because there are dark things in the water, although invisible to the naked eye, they are harmful to the human body. Once the dark things enter the human body through the mouth, it can easily cause an epidemic. Chapter 1389. The youth continued. Most of the corpses of the southern barbarians were thrown into the river nearby. The weather is hot now, and the corpses decay very quickly. It will definitely increase the amount of in the water. I think this might be the reason for the spread of the disease between the two armies? Hua Yuan asked him, is that what the young lord thinks? If not, why do you and my father have to boil the water before drinking? He had to suspect that the current situation was part of Hua Yuan's plan. Once he opened his mouth, it was easy for the youth to say what he wanted to say next. He continued, previously the allied vassals ostracized my father and allocated a bad camp. The generals were quite indignant. You knew that our camp was far from the water source and that it was not easy to get water. Why did you agree without hesitation and even sent people to dig a few wells? The reason Hua Yuan gave was very decent. In the face of a great enemy, our army should focus on the overall situation. Such a small matter was not worth falling out and damaging the harmony. Now that he thought about it, it was frightening. Most of the Enchui soldiers' drinking water came from wells and the other half from rivers. There were fewer sick soldiers than the other vassals. The youth clenched his fists, his gaze complicated. Previously, it was you who proposed to slaughter the four factions of the southern barbarians. Was this a trap that you planned long ago? Ancient battles were very violent in dealing with corpses. They were either buried in pits, thrown into the river to feed the fish, or left in the wilderness. Jiang Pengji burned the corpses of both sides in every battle. In the eyes of others, it seemed like she had nothing better to do and even brought a stain on her reputation. It was one thing to burn the enemy's corpse, but she even burned the corpses of her own people. How vicious was this lord? Looking at it now, the man in front of him was even worse. Hua Yuan chuckled. They asked for it. It has nothing to do with others. I just took advantage of the situation and didn't plan it deliberately. The youth could not help but shiver. Hua Yuan continued. I thought that the southern barbarians were like grasshoppers after autumn and wouldn't be able to jump around for long. Who knew that they were like a centipede that died but didn't fall down? Even when they were about to die, they still caused trouble. Of course, I had to think of other countermeasures. The youth asked him, what about the allied forces? The southern barbarians deserve to die, but the allied soldiers. Hua Yuan looked at the youth with some disappointment. Isn't this for the sake of the lord and the young master? He said, once the southern barbarians are eliminated, can the alliance still maintain the current situation? Young master, you might as well refer to Dongqing's Huangshui conference. During the conference, there was a lot of scheming, and after the conference, it was a battle to the death. His Highness's power was not considered top-notch among the Nanxing feudal vassals. If he wanted to survive in this chaotic world, he naturally could not let the enemy gain the upper hand. Now is a good opportunity. The youth's mind was in a mess. Hua Yuan shook his head inwardly. In the war between the feudal lords, it was either you die or I die. The barbarian-slaying alliance was united by external forces. Once the external forces disappeared, internal strife was inevitable. And Shui's provisions were richer than the other feudal vassals. So how could others watch him grow? Only by striking first and gaining the upper hand could one maintain an invincible position. The next day, the teenager found out that Hua Yuan had purposely befriended Yan Lin, Yang Tao's advisor, and accidentally revealed the source of the epidemic. The youth was even more confused. Mr. Hua Yuan had just said that he was going to weaken the others the day before. Why was he helping Yang Tao the next day? Hua Yuan sneered in response. If Yang Tao dies, who will resist the ambitious Liu Shi? Nansheng and Dongqing were separated by Yang Tao. To Shui, Jiang Pengji's threat was far greater than Yang Tao's. Nansheng had been ravaged by the four factions of Nanman, and its vitality had long been greatly damaged. Although Dongqing was also weak, Jiang Pengji had basically unified it. She recuperated and trained her troops for a few years. Wouldn't it be easy to defeat Nansheng? Yang Tao's existence was very necessary. He could buy some buffer time for Shui at the critical moment. The medical skills of the four factions of Nanman were backward, and the logistics of the military camp were simple and crude. They could not withstand the ravages of the epidemic. When a midsummer passed and the weather turned cold, the number of people killed by the epidemic in the four factions of Nanman reached 200,000. The situation of the barbarian-slaying alliance was slightly better. Yang Tao had found the source of the epidemic. The military doctors isolated the source of infection and slowly brought the disease under control. Even so, the alliance still suffered heavy losses. Only the two feudal vassals, Shui and Yang Tao, managed to preserve their vitality. While the feudal lords of Nansheng were scheming and guarding against each other, Jiang Pengji was busy like a spinning top. Thanks to Madame Tao and the others' selfless contributions, Jiang Pengji became rich again. Money could only be earned if it was spent. It would only rust and gather dust if it was kept in the storeroom. Adhering to this philosophy, she started dozens of construction projects in one go. They ranged from building houses and roads to building reservoirs, repairing rivers, and reclaiming wastelands. Not only could they attract refugees and improve public security, but they could also provide a large number of jobs for the people. As long as there was work and money to be earned, which commoner would be stupid enough to rebel and cause trouble? They were used to Jiang Pengji's warlike state. Every day, she was either fighting a war or on the way to fighting a war. What about now? The content of the live stream changed from a hot-blooded fight for hegemony to a heartwarming scene of farming. The streamer who went against the heavens and the earth stayed at home to manage her territory. She was not like the streamer they knew. No matter how the salted fish roared, Jiang Pengji was indifferent. She continued to spend money like it was dirt. Speaking of spending money, one had to mention the branch of the Golden Scale Academy. Last year, during the enrollment expansion, Jiang Pengji secretly allowed the children of wealthy merchants and country gentlemen to enter the Golden Scale Academy. There were not many students, but those students were carefully selected. These children studied in the Golden Scale Academy for almost a year. Their learning effects were remarkable. More and more people secretly inquired when the Golden Scale Academy would continue to enroll so that they could fight for opportunities for their children to enter. Jiang Pengji felt that the time was right. She took the opportunity to propose the expansion of the Golden Scale Academy and the establishment of two branches. The Golden Scale Academy was the blood and sweat of Feng Run, Cheng Cheng, and Yuanjing. If she wanted to expand, she naturally had to discuss with them. The three big shots had no objections. After a few years, the academy had explored a more mature teaching plan. It was not a big problem to establish a branch. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "It's the fortune of all the students in the world that you are so understanding and reasonable." Master Yuanjing joked, In my opinion, Master Lanting's generosity is the fortune of all the students in the world. The Golden Scale Academy was a teaching institution that had no income. The students' uniforms, textbooks, brushes, ink, daily expenses, and the teachers' salaries were all paid for by the government. There were also gifts during festivals. The land and buildings of the academy were also paid for by Jiang Pengji. Master Yuan Jing had run an academy before. Of course, he knew how huge the annual expenses of the Golden Scale Academy were. After confirming their gazes, Jiang Pengji was undoubtedly a nouveau riche. Speaking of this, I have something to discuss with you. Now that the treasury is abundant, it won't be a problem to build 3 to 5 branches, but this is not a long-term plan to maintain the academy's operations. I have a plan here, and I'd like to hear your opinions. Feng Run and the others heard her, and their hearts skipped a beat. What did she mean? Did she want the academy to transform and become self-sufficient? Chapter 1390. Feng Run didn't care. If the Golden Scale Academy was reformed, it would benefit the gentry. Master Yuan Jing and the others had to consider the ordinary students in the academy. Jiang Pengji saw through their thoughts at a glance. She couldn't help but chuckle and dispel their worries. Last year, in addition to the fixed number of students, there were an additional 50 places for external recruitment. Do you gentlemen still remember this? Feng Ren and the others had a strange expression when she mentioned this. Why? Because the students who were specially recruited, apart from their talents, their family wealth was also a very important indicator. Those students could be described in one sentence. They were so poor that they had nothing but money. Scholars were more virtuous, especially those who devoted themselves to education. When they received Jiang Pengji's order, they were somewhat reluctant. Education was a noble and great cause. How could they tarnish it with dirty money? They should treat money as dirt. Cheng Cheng said, I remember. Those children are talented and diligent. They didn't disgrace the Golden Scale Academy. If those students were rich, they wouldn't let Jiang Pengji do whatever she wanted, even if they had power and influence, let alone money. Jiang Pengji said, It's good that you remember. Then you should also remember that those students are well off. Master Yuan Jing smiled bitterly and said, What do you want to say? You can say it directly. Why do you keep us guessing? If she wasn't the Lord, she would be easily beaten. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, I mean to hold a business fair. Only the highest bidder is qualified to invest in the construction of the branch of the Golden Scale Academy. The few of them thought that they had misheard, not to mention what the business fair was. Which idiot would take the initiative to bid for such a qualification? Hearing Jiang Pengji's words, it seemed like a good thing that others couldn't even beg for. Feng Ren asked uncertainly, Only the highest bidder is qualified to invest in the construction of the academy? Jiang Pengji asked suspiciously, Yes. Is there anything wrong? There were so many things wrong. They couldn't even complain. Jiang Pengji said again, Don't doubt me. If the news is released, there will definitely be people kneeling and begging to build an academy for us. They didn't say a word so as not to break Jiang Pengji's daydream. She continued, The person who invests in the construction of a branch of the Golden Scale Academy will be given the title of an honorary dean after the completion of the branch. Not only will the government commend the person in front of the public and give him a plaque, they will also support the business under his name. For example, in a competition of the same trade, with the same goods and the same price, one side is a shop run by an ordinary merchant, and the other side is a righteous merchant certified by the government. Who do you think the people will choose? Feng Ren and the others were frightened. Was there such a thing? Scholars, farmers, merchants, and merchant are at the bottom. This group was often criticized by others. If they were given such a chance, wouldn't the students from the branch schools be grateful to this honorary headmaster? Will future generations benefit from this? Jiang Pengji smiled. The government has praised the merchants, so the people naturally believe in their business. How could those shrewd merchants not see these benefits? For the rich, precious things were often not things that could be bought with money, but things that could not be bought with money. It was true that merchants were rich, But no matter how rich they were, could they buy the respect of the world? Their descendants were born with a lower status, let alone respect them. If one became the honorary headmaster, it was equivalent to making friends with the potential of the academy. How powerful would their connections and hidden wealth be? After Jiang Pengji's guidance, Feng Run and the others also thought of this. They could not help but laugh at themselves for being dull. They said that no fool in the world would be willing to do such a stupid thing, but they did not know that this was really a good thing that was worth fighting for. Feng Ren's political sense did not deteriorate. He keenly grasped the main point. Lord Lanting, are you planning to support the merchants? I know what you're worried about, but supporting the merchants is something that must be done. People live to live a better life. Scholars, farmers, merchants, and merchants. Who doesn't do this? Jiang Pengji said. Supporting the merchants does not mean that we condone them. I think it is to regulate and correct them. Take this time as an example. The merchants who are qualified must ensure that the shops they run are legal, that the goods they sell are clean, and that the prices they sell to the public are normal. There will not be any phenomenon of maliciously jacking up prices, malicious competition, or harming the people. The outside world had a bad impression of the merchants. Apart from suppressing this group being politically correct, the merchants themselves had many problems. It was true that Jiang Pengji planned to support the merchants, but she would not allow them to embarrass themselves. Feng Ren said, if that's the case, it's not bad. He had no reason to object. It was beneficial to others and himself. However, Feng Ren continued, if the branch is handed over to them to manage this, Jiang Pengji said, Master, you misunderstood me. The branch will still follow the rules of the main school, and the treatment will be the same as the main school. The dean and teachers will also be selected by the teachers. The source of students will be a little more relaxed. Half of them will be orphans of heroes, and the other half will be recruited from the outside. Even if Jiang Pengji supported the poor, she would not shut out people from other classes. Compared to outshining others, she preferred letting 100 flowers bloom together. Feng Ren's side was dealt with. Master Yuan Jing had something to say. Lord Lanting, what do you plan to choose the branch? The Golden Scale Academy's foundation is still shallow. If it is too far away, it is hard to guarantee that no one will do something that appears to be obedient but secretly opposed. Although it is a branch, it cannot be tarnished. The management of the academy should be stricter. Jiang Pengji said, both branches will be built in Wanzhou. One will be built in Shanyang County, and the other will be built in Shanjing Prefecture. Both places were under Jiang Pengji's nose. Who would dare to cause trouble? Feng Ren smiled. That's good. There were many aristocratic families in Shanyang County, but not every aristocratic family was a local tyrant. Many aristocratic families were rich, but the branch families lived a hard life. The branch of the Golden Scale Academy was built there, and the children of the branch families who were down and out would definitely fight for a place. This would unknowingly alleviate the conflict between the aristocratic families and Jiang Pengji. Shanjing Prefecture used to be the capital of Dongqing, but it was destroyed by an earthquake. Jiang Pengji rebuilt the Wanzhou Prefecture there, attracting ordinary people and refugees to settle there. After 1 or 2 years of business support, the place was revitalized. In general, Shanjing Prefecture was the territory of ordinary people, and it was also one of Jiang Pengji's strongholds. The branch was built there, and the students recruited from the outside were naturally children from ordinary backgrounds. The two branches balanced the 3 classes, and they did not offend anyone. Other than that, Lord Lanting, do you have any other requirements? Jiang Pengji added, the students recruited from the outside must be half male and half female. Do you have any objections? Feng Ren and the others smiled bitterly. Who dare to say, I have any objections in front of a female lord? Looking at Jiang Pengji's stance, she would definitely promote a large number of women to become officials in the future. Anyone who objected would be going against her. After doing the ideological work of these few big shots, Jiang Pengji was relieved to reveal the matter of attracting investment. Chapter 1391. Has Lu Shi gone crazy from poverty? Does he really think he's the son of heaven and everyone has to give in to him and help him? Jiang Pengji was full of confidence, but the public opinion was not optimistic about her plan. Most of them were pessimistic, and some were sarcastic. Who knows? She's now the one who holds the final say in Dongqing. Won't she be allowed to be arrogant for a few days? This topic had become the favorite topic of gossip recently. Regardless of whether it was a peddler or a student, they would only be satisfied if they gave some advice. Someone said, merchants pursue profits, and their bones reek of money. They can still hear the sound of money if they throw it into the water. What benefits do the people who contribute to the construction of a branch of the Golden Scale Academy get? TSK, all the good reputation and merits are taken by others. Someone mocked, how much silver does it take to build an academy? If it were me, even if I have so much money in my hands, I'd rather bury it for my descendants. How can there be such a simple-minded person in the world? Someone said, who knows, maybe there really are some people who have lost a piece of their brains and are willing to pay for the sake of flattery. Someone else said, how much does it cost to build an academy? According to the rules of the Golden Scale Academy, it should cost more than 100,000 strings of coins, right? The expenses of the students in the Golden Scale Academy are huge. Who can afford to support hundreds of students? Let's not talk about writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. They have 3 meals a day of meat, 2 vegetables, and 1 soup. They have 3 sets of clothes for each season of the year and 100 coins of pocket money every month. Ordinary people only eat meat during festivals. It takes 3 years to sew and mend a set of clothes. Who is willing to be a fool and pay to support these students who can eat so much? The common people were pessimistic. Some gentry who disliked Jiang Pengji also looked on coldly from the sidelines. Everyone had the same goal. They were all waiting to see Jiang Pengji make a fool of herself. Unbeknownst to them, there were already many rich people who wanted to kneel down and beg Jiang Pengji with money. However, they had no way out and could only be anxious. No matter how big their business was, they were still the lowest class of merchants. Jiang Pengji was a feudal lord. How could ordinary people meet her whenever they wanted? They had to think of a way even if they had no other way. There were only 2 spots. If they were too slow and someone else got it before them, they would beat them to it. Everyone used all kinds of martial arts. Some used their connections to find a way out, while others were in a favorable position. They turned their attention to the children who were studying again. They didn't have any official connections, but their children were studying in the Golden Scale Academy. There were many second generations of officials in the academy. As long as Feng Yi and the others went back and learned from their relatives, it would be equivalent to informing Jiang Pengji. Because the Golden Scale Academy implemented full-time education, they could only meet their children once a month. If parents wanted to meet their children, they had to make an appointment in advance. Thus, the following situation occurred. Father, what are you doing? I don't lack food in the academy, and the academy doesn't allow students to wear private clothes, so I don't need them. The daughter looked at the small mountain of gift boxes behind her father and suddenly felt flattered. She wasn't well liked at home, so she didn't expect her father to care about her so much. Her father said embarrassedly, this is not for you. I want to ask, do you know those Longjuan's wives? The daughter couldn't hide her disappointment, but she said, what about the Longjuan's wives? Who is father referring to? Naturally, it's the children of the big shots in Wanzhou. Aren't they all your classmates? You don't know them? The daughter was speechless. The Golden Scale Academy was divided into different grades according to the age and progress of the students. The few that her father mentioned were all senior students, so how could they be considered classmates? At most, they could be considered schoolmates. Looking at this posture, she also knew that her father had a favor to ask and wanted her to be his matchmaker. She said, if father has anything you want to ask them for help, I can give it a try, but don't give them gifts or bribes. Her father panicked and reprimanded her. This is called the way of the world. How can it be called bribery? What does a little girl know? The daughter said, the way of the world shouldn't be given to a few students. It's easy to ruin their reputation, and they most likely won't accept it. Her father choked, but he had to admit that his daughter's words made sense. Giving gifts was the way of the world. To put it bluntly, it was also bribery and corruption. They might not necessarily lack such gifts. The daughter asked him, "Father, why are you looking for them?" "There's news that the Duke of Lanting wants to establish a branch of the Golden Scale Academy. I think that my family is quite rich, so I might as well donate one and become an honorary dean. After a few years, wouldn't the students who graduate from the branch be grateful for this favor? This will be good for our family." Her father said, "Your eldest brother is mediocre, and your second brother is useless. In the family, you're the only one who's more promising, but you're a girl. I'm afraid that after 100 years, they won't be able to protect their family business. Now that they can plan more, they'll have a guarantee in the future." Merchants had money, but no power or influence, so they often had to find ways to rely on others. Although they had great wealth, they didn't have the ability to protect it. If their descendants were more prodigal and their relatives were more eccentric, they would be lonely within 3 generations. The current world wasn't peaceful. Without a backer, even a mountain of gold and silver could be robbed clean. "I can give it a try, but I can't guarantee that it'll work." Although they were students of the same academy, and those few were amiable and approachable, they wouldn't fight with ordinary students. How to pass the message? She had to think carefully. Compared to using connections to go through the back door, this method was efficient and convenient. How many middlemen would be saved? Feng Yi became the target of many people, so he told his father Feng Zhen about it. Feng Zhen teased his son with a smile. "Those people are so stingy, so stingy. Don't they all say that they're rich, but they don't give any benefits when they ask for help? So immature." Feng Yi said, "Accepting bribes and breaking the rules. How will my classmates look at me in the future?" Feng Zhen wanted to laugh, but Wan Xiao tapped his hand with her fan, telling him to take it easy. It wasn't easy for the old Feng family to raise such a good son. They couldn't let Feng Zhen ruin his future. Feng Zhen wasn't serious either, so he took the opportunity to touch her hand, which made Wan Xiao roll her eyes. "With your personality, you should be a censor in the future. You'll definitely offend everyone you meet." He was such a perfect romantic, so why did he have such a dull and insensible son? Feng Yi said, "A censor is not bad. In the future, he would have to report to his father every day, who asked him to be covered with lice." All the families waited anxiously for a reply. Only Jiang Pengji, the big winner, sat there calmly. She sent people to collect information about the family's backgrounds and property evaluations. She looked at them one by one. The salted fish audience also accompanied her in her careful selection. After a long time, a certain salted fish raised a question. "Eat hot pot tonight. Didn't you say that the highest bidder wins?" "Streamer, you're trying to make a private deal." Jiang Pengji said, "Do I look like someone who will bend over for 5 buckets of rice? On the surface, it's an auction, but money doesn't get you the right to bid. If the person who spent a lot of money to buy a spot is a black-hearted businessman, won't I be harming the people and tarnishing my own reputation?" She said it boldly and confidently, as if she regarded money as dirt. If the salted fish didn't know her well, he would have been deceived by her acting. Besides, was that 5 buckets of rice? Chapter 1392. Each of the 360 professions had its own master. Merchants who had the ability to expand their businesses naturally had a vision that ordinary people couldn't compare to. While this group of people was painstakingly trying to find a way, someone had already seen Jiang Pengji one step ahead of them. This person was none other than the leader of Chongzhou's Chui clan, Chui Yu. When outsiders mentioned the Chui family of Chongzhou, they would always mention their clan leader, Chui Yu, whose eyes were like torches. Why? This was because Chui Yu had placed a heavy bet on Jiang Pengji before her power grew. It was precisely because of this choice that the small family that had been hovering between second and third class leaped to become the leader of Chongzhou's powers. Before relying on Jiang Pengji, The Chui family of Chongzhou was seen as a fence-sitter in the eyes of outsiders. They relied on business with the north borderline to make a fortune and were always looked down upon. After Jiang Pengji took over Chongzhou, she faced the threat of the north borderline and the suppression of the local aristocrats in Chongzhou. The Chuis were not afraid of the situation and resolutely chose to support Jiang Pengji. The facts proved that the Chui's gamble had paid off. As a reward, the Chuis obtained the right to sell bamboo paper and rice paper from Jiang Pengji. After the two parties had cooperated for 5 years, the Chuis could also obtain the secret recipe of the two kinds of paper. Relying on this business, the Chui family had made a lot of money in the past few years, and their status had risen along with it. Chui Yu heard that Jiang Pengji wanted to attract investors to build a branch of the Golden Scale Academy, so he rushed over without stopping to rest. Fortunately, when Chui Yu heard the news, he was checking on business at a shop not far from Wanzhou. Otherwise, it would have been too late. When Jiang Pengji heard about Chui Yu's visit, she was rather surprised. Why isn't he staying in Chongzhou? Why is he here in Wanzhou? In the live stream room, Salted Fish wore a dumbfounded look. It had been too long, and Salted Fish had changed batches after batches. They had forgotten who Chui Yu was. Fortunately, there was still a group of big shots in the live broadcast room. They were all good students who took notes during the live broadcast. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu, Chui Yu from Chongzhou? I have some impression of him. He seems to be the family head of Chongzhou's Chui family. I remember his name is Chonghuan because this fellow always reminds me of Yuan Chonghuan. Speaking of which, this man hasn't shown his face in the live broadcast room for many years. Tudu Feiqiu. If Chui Yu hadn't appeared, I would have forgotten who he was. Old Salted Fish's attitude of meeting an old friend in a foreign land piqued the newbie's curiosity. Salami, who is Chui Yu? What about his looks? How old is he? Poor Taoist, sees your chrysanthemum is poisonous. During the earthquake in Dongqing, the streamer saved a baby who was protected by his mother before she died. That baby was Chui Yu's son. Later on, the streamer used this child to get in touch with Chui Yu, roped in the Chui family, suppressed the other aristocratic families in Chongzhou, and turned the tables to take control of Chongzhou. As for Chui Yu, he should be around the same age as Fengjin. He was married and had a son. The Salted Fish all had the same question in their hearts. What was Chui Yu's purpose for coming here? Could it be that it was also to fight for a place in the Branch Academy? No matter how curious Salted Fish was, the answer could only be revealed when he met the person. After not seeing each other for several years, time did not leave a deep mark on Chui Yu's face. Instead, it added some depth and steadiness to his face. Jiang Pengji went straight to the point and asked, why did Zhonghuan come to Wanzhou? She was a busy person and her time was precious. She didn't have the time to keep him in suspense. Chui Yu was also used to Jiang Pengji's straightforwardness. He said, because some parts of the accounts collected last year don't match up, I've been checking the shops outside for the past few days. I happen to hear that my lord is preparing to build a branch of the Golden Scale Academy. I wonder if this is true? Jiang Pengji looked at Chui Yu with a faint smile. Of course it's true. Could it be that Zhonghuan also has such intentions? The Salted Fish couldn't help but hold their breath. They felt that the atmosphere was not quite right. Chui Yu came to invest. Wasn't this a good thing? Why did the streamer look unhappy? The Chui family has been operating for many years and has a small amount of assets. If my lord doesn't mind, I will naturally offer it to you to solve this urgent need. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, Zhonghuan's news is outdated. I slaughtered a few fat sheep from the Tao family a while ago. Why would I be short of money? Chui Yu revealed a relaxed smile and said gently, I see. Then I'm overthinking. After the two of them finished talking, the inexplicably tense atmosphere dissipated, leaving the Salted Fish confused. Yinuagia Zhuge Qinma. Have you forgotten the identity of the Chui family? The Chui family is now second to none in Chongzhou. They used to be rich, and now they have power and influence. They are also trusted by the streamer and have taken over many profitable businesses. If the Chui family gets involved in the branch of the Golden Scale Academy, the students from the branch will be the Chui family's natural connections. These students are talents that the streamer spent a lot of money and time to nurture. It is impossible for them to become ordinary people. At the very least, they will be low-ranking officials. Those who are capable may even be high-ranking officials. If the Chui family is a little ambitious, it will be much easier for them to form a clique for personal gain. Chui Yu came to test Jiang Pengji. Seeing that she had no intention of letting the Chui family get involved in this aspect, he changed his words. The salted fish listened to the analysis of the big boss and could not help but shout at the society. Does one need intelligence to watch the live stream these days? After all, Chui Yu was one of them. Jiang Pengji did not treat him too harshly. She rejected Chui Yu's participation in the battle and handed over the paper supply business to Chui Yu. With the gradual improvement of the paper-making technology, the annual consumption of paper rose in a straight line. The production model of a small workshop could no longer meet such a large demand. Coincidentally, Jiang Pengji and Chui Yu's 5-year cooperation was about to end. At that time, she will hand over the secret recipe of paper production to the Chui family. After the Chui family has made a lot of money, the secret recipe will be made public so that other merchants can have a share of the profits. When there are more merchants producing paper, the market price will gradually decrease as the production volume increases. In the end, the ordinary scholars will benefit. Hearing Jiang Pengji's decision, Chui Yu's expression became much better. His worried heart also relaxed. The child of the Zhonghuan family is also studying in the academy? I remember the child is called Fushou, right? Regarding the name Fushou, which has a good meaning but is unbearably vulgar, Chui Yu could only maintain an awkward but polite smile. He had no choice. He begged Jiang Pengji for this name. No matter how vulgar it is, he has to use it. My son has been studying in the academy for 2 years. The master has taught him attentively. A while ago, he sent a letter home saying that he got into the top 3 in his class. Jiang Pengji praised him sincerely. Top 3? That's really good. The Zhonghuan family has a successor. Chui Yu thought that Jiang Pengji was still single and did not even have child. He could only listen silently with a smile and did not dare to answer. The outside world was waiting to see Jiang Pengji make a fool of herself. No one expected that the Chui family would appear at this juncture. Knowing that the Chui family did not get the quota, the crowd continued to sneer and watch. A group of merchants with big businesses could not sit still. Chui Yu was Jiang Pengji's confidant. If he wanted to fight for the quota, they really had no hope. Chapter 1393. The outside world was waiting to see a joke. Unexpectedly, on the day of registration, merchants with some wealth almost trampled the threshold of the registration office. Is it true that money burns one's hands? TSK. We commoners don't understand the thoughts of the rich. How can they not feel bad losing hundreds of thousands of coins? Some people were puzzled, and some people maliciously speculated and spread rumors. Maybe the Duke of Lanting knew that no one would come, so he specially invited people from the theatrical troupe to make a guest appearance. Naturally, there were people who came out to refute the rumors. What theatrical troupe making a guest appearance? Which one of you haven't seen the performers from the theatrical troupe? I took a peek just now. Guess who I saw? My old boss is also there. My old boss is the boss of Chen's shop. He has many businesses: rice shop, cloth shop, food shop, wine shop. Walk 2 streets ahead and turn left. That cloth shop is owned by my old boss, and it only serves nobles. Hey, come on. You're a barefoot rough man. Have you ever seen the boss of Chen's shop? The surrounding people ridiculed him, and the man's face turned red with anger. However, he was not good with words and could not win against others. On the other side, the rich man in the eyes of the commoners, the boss of Chen's shop, also obediently queued up to register. Looking to his left, there were old business acquaintances. Looking to his right, there were old business rivals. Suddenly, he felt a headache coming on and had no idea what to do. Not only did he have a headache, but his old acquaintances and rivals also had a headache. There were too many wolves and not enough meat. There were only 2 slots, but there were 40 to 50 people competing for them. It seemed that to win, they could only rely on their wealth. Many people secretly gritted their teeth, planning to spend a lot of money to get a slot. Unexpectedly, the person in charge said that this was only the first stage. Everyone was at a loss. This was only the first stage? The person in charge said, although the branch has the name of a branch, it is actually no different from the main branch. The students of the branch are also the pillars of the future, and their reputation cannot be tarnished. Of course, we have to be very careful in selecting the honorary dean. Family wealth is secondary, and the most important thing is integrity. Wealth is obtained in the right way. Profit from righteousness, conduct business, compete fairly, and never break the law or harm the common people. Once they obtain the quota, they would basically be considered half an official's family. Even if their children could not become officials, they would still be respected by others. Jiang Pengji's meaning was very clear. I'm not interested in the money in your pockets. I'm more interested in your reputation. If your reputation is bad, no matter how rich you are, you'll still have to scram. Everyone was excited and trembling at the same time. They could not help but rack their brains to recall if their businesses had violated any laws or regulations. When it came to merchants, some relied on black-hearted business to make huge profits in a short period of time, while others relied on integrity and hard work to slowly expand their business. Upon hearing the manager's words, many merchants silently heaved a sigh of relief and revealed meaningful smiles. The other group of people were sad. They wished they could go back in time and kill this dark history in the cradle. The person in charge said, "We will send envoys to investigate in secret, so please don't lie." Everyone's face turned pale. If he didn't think of a way to fake it, how could he deceive everyone? The person in charge also appropriately revealed Jiang Pengji's intention to support the merchants. Although she did not agree to allow the merchants to become officials, everyone saw hope. Naturally, they did not dare to ask for more. They went home happily and waited for the news. As long as they passed the first test, it meant that the remaining people were good merchants who operated with integrity. With the government certification, they could also gain a favorable impression among the people. It was a steady profit and not a loss. The outside world looked on dumbfoundedly. They did not expect there to be more than one prodigal with too much money in the world. There was a string of people rushing to give money to Jiang Pengji. Not only that, but Jiang Pengji was also picky. Those who did not meet the requirements were not qualified to beg her to collect money. How infuriating! After a selection that was comparable to a talent show, Jiang Pengji considered all aspects of the conditions and finally chose two families as the lucky ones for this activity. The Chen family and the Sun family, the two big businesses, were selected. The Sun family cried tears of joy. The retired head supported himself with a walking stick and trembled as he opened the ancestral hall to thank the ancestors for their blessings. He cried and laughed at the same time, which made people worry about the old ancestors' health. The reaction of the Chen family was not much calmer. Not only did they open the ancestral hall, but they also held a 3-day banquet. Regardless of status, everyone could attend. Even if a group of beggars came, they could also eat and drink. Jiang Pengji even met the two personally to discuss the location of the branch. The two heads were so nervous that they could not speak coherently. Their hands and feet were trembling. The whole process was basically Jiang Pengji's suggestion. The two said, "Yes, okay, no problem. You can make the decision, Lord Lanting." In front of Lord Lanting, they only needed to talk. They did not need to bring their brains. There was also a small interlude in the middle, which was about the land of the branch. The land was Jiang Pengji's, but the two families had to buy it from Jiang Pengji. They had to pay 100 years of rent in one go. Because it was not fertile land, the price was not expensive. 200 mu of land did not cost much. The salted fish in the streaming room felt sorry for the two honest people. Jiang Pengji was clearly ripping them off. The people who were being ripped off had to smile and say yes. They took the initiative to wash their necks and machetes and waited anxiously for Jiang Pengji to rip them off. Graphizi, I feel so sorry for them that I can't watch anymore. These two are the most honest people of the year. The salted fish felt sorry for them. but the two were overjoyed and enjoyed it. Jiang Pengji said, "As for the branch, I will send someone to contact the two of you after the rules and regulations are drawn up. If you have any suggestions, you can raise them. If there are no accidents, the branch should start construction on the auspicious day next month. It is estimated that it will be completed by the middle of next year. You have invested a lot, so it is inevitable that you will neglect the learning and education of the younger generation. If there is a talented younger generation in your family, you could try to send them to the branch." After the two heard it, they were so moved that they wanted to cry. Their hearts were completely at ease. They had just invested, and they saw the hope of the autumn harvest. Jiang Pengji sent the two middle-aged men who were moved to tears away. Before she had a moment of peace, someone outside said that Lu Zhao wanted to see her. Sister, save little brother." Lu Zhao had just arrived when he pounced on Jiang Pengji like a swallow, throwing itself into her arms. She dodged him coldly and stretched out her leg to trip him. Unsurprisingly, Lu Zhao fell and staggered. He felt wronged and said, "Sister." Lu Zhao's gaze was filled with, "You are cold, heartless, and unreasonable. What happened to the brother-sister love?" Jiang Pengji said, "Tell me, what's the matter? Don't tell me you don't have any spare change to spend again." Lu Zhao said, "Sister, do you think I'm such a worthless piece of trash? This is really an urgent matter. Speak normally." Lu Zhao said, "Father is coming. The letter just arrived, and he's already here." "Lu Shi?" Jiang Pengji frowned. "Father is coming? Why didn't anyone inform me?" Lu Zhao said, "Sister, aren't you busy with work? I also waited for an hour before I saw you." Jiang Pengji stood up and flicked her sleeves. She said calmly, "I'm going to see Father. Do you want to come?" Lu Zhao trembled and said with a bitter face, "If Father questions me about running away from the marriage, you have to help me." Chapter 1394. Lu Zhao couldn't help but feel touched. "Sister, you were so charming just now." Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and patted his head with a smile. "You have good taste, kid." Salted fish in the streaming room couldn't help but praise Lu Zhao's desire to live. For the sake of his life, he would say anything that went against his conscience. Xing Yuan meow meow. It's tragic. Brother Lu Zhao seems to be the first person of the opposite sex to praise the streamer's charm. Wandering Yu Hang. "Streamer, you can't defeat a frog even after 10 years. Why don't you change your strategy and find out more about the German orthopedics department?" Xianyun Feishing. The unpopular couple has finally been noticed? I really like the Queen's sister and the lackey CP. When the streamer interacts with Zhao's brother, I feel that the aura around her becomes gentle. I really like the way they interact. Yixia Jixing. The streamer is indeed the main attacker. She can attack whoever the couple is. But Zhao's brother is too weak. I don't like it. Lu Zhao shuddered and followed behind Jiang Pengji like a little wife. He was even more afraid at the thought of meeting Lu Shi. "Sister, guess why Father came to Wanzhou?" Jiang Pengji smiled. "Didn't you run away from your wedding last time? Maybe he's here to bring up the past again?" Lu Zhao was so scared that he tripped over his right foot. If Jiang Pengji hadn't helped him, he might have fallen to the ground. "Sister, don't scare me. I don't like the person Father arranged," Jiang Pengji asked calmly. "If you don't like the person he arranged, who do you like? No matter what, you're not young anymore. If you're still single and there's no woman to serve you, outsiders will only say that I'm not a good sister and that I'm treating my brother badly." Lu Zhao felt his scalp go numb. His sister's question was a dead end. He couldn't answer it well. I don't have a girl I like." Lu Zhao couldn't help but say shyly, "I'm still young. Keep me by your side for 2 more years." Jiang Pengji snorted meaningfully, but she didn't comment. When the siblings saw Lu Shi, he was sitting opposite Gu Zhen and drinking. The faint fragrance of pear blossom wine wafted through the air. Brother-in-law's brewing skills are almost the same as my sister's. Gu Dai was dressed in casual clothes and slightly made up. She looked a few years younger than her actual age. It was just like the saying, Sun Yang is getting old, but still charming. Lu Shi, who was sitting opposite her, was still dressed in a dark green Confucian robe. His hair was dyed gray, and there was a sense of relaxation and contentment between his brows. He said, "Being almost the same doesn't mean it's the same. In the end, it's still different. It can't replicate her taste." While the two of them were talking, Jiang Pengji brought the cowardly and weak Lu Zhao inside and bowed to the two of them. Lu Zhao also obediently followed suit, wishing that she could hide her petite body in the shadow of her elder sister's sturdy body. "Father, mother." Guzhen agreed with a smile, but Lu Shi snorted coldly. He placed the wine cup in his hand on the table with a clang, scaring Lu Zhao so much that his heart trembled. Jiang Pengji said, "Why did father suddenly come? At least let me know in advance so that I can send people out of the city to welcome my father." Seeing that Jiang Pengji had spoken, Lu Zhao secretly rejoiced that he had successfully changed his target. Who knew that Lu Shi would not let him go? "I'm here for my unfilial son's marriage. It's just a family matter. It's more important for you to attend to your own business. There's no need to involve so many people." Lu Shi's pitch-black eyes seemed to hide a horrifying sharp blade. Lu Zhao felt uncomfortable when he looked at him. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. He was extremely afraid of Lu Shi. If Jiang Pengji had not stood in front of him, Lu Zhao did not know whether he would have made a fool of himself in front of everyone. For Zhao's marriage, Jiang Pengji tilted her head and looked at the pitiful Lu Zhao. She said, "Marriage depends on fate. Zhao still wants to play around and is unwilling to get married. Why should father force him? It's better to let him play around. He wants to settle down when he's old enough." After playing around for 3 or 4 years, when Lu Zhao was tired, he would naturally want to find an honest man to be his successor. Lu Shi said, "Lanting is always so protective of him. You spoil him so much that he doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Marriage is naturally decided by parents. He doesn't know how old he is. He's always fooling around and doesn't know how to settle down. When can he get married and not be a burden to you?" Jiang Pengji said indifferently, "I think I have some resources. I can afford to raise 10 more children, let alone one." Lu Zhao was moved to tears. Sister, she was definitely his biological sister. She was standing up to his father, Lu Shi, for her brother. Lu Shi sighed. "If it's about raising him, I can afford it. I don't lack food for him." He had come to settle Lu Zhao's marriage. He had fulfilled one of his wishes. Jiang Pengji saw that he was determined, so she could only ask Lu Shi, "Father, you've made up your mind. I can't stop you or reject your good intentions. About Zhao's marriage, do you have a candidate in mind?" Lu Zhao's heart suddenly turned cold. "Sister, you have to bear the pressure." Lu Shi rolled his eyes at Lu Zhao and grumpily said, "I do have a few good candidates, and their temperaments and family backgrounds are similar, but I still have to ask this unfilial son if he has any women he likes. Otherwise, why would he run away to Wanzhou without saying a word?" Lu Zhao suddenly became the center of attention. He was so scared that his heart trembled. He said with a slight lack of confidence, "I do have a girl I like, but..." Jiang Pengji was not surprised. Lu Shi asked, "But what? Could it be that she's married?" "Master Cheng's youngest daughter." Lu Zhao gathered his courage and said, "We've met a few times, but it's just my unrequited love. She doesn't know what you're thinking. I don't know if Master Cheng has arranged a marriage for her, so I haven't dared to say it." Jiang Pengji said, "If you knew this was what you were thinking, why didn't you say it earlier? I could have talked to Master Cheng for you." Lu Shi said coldly, "He doesn't deserve it. He's Lu Shi's younger brother. There's no one he doesn't deserve." Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Zhao, go back and wait for the news. I'll go to Master Cheng's residence and ask him about it. If that Cheng Yangzi is still unmarried, this marriage may not be impossible." Lu Zhao was dumbfounded. He felt Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji seemed to have swapped positions. According to his calculations, shouldn't Lu Shi be the matchmaker while his sister objected or tried to smooth things over? Based on Lu Zhao's current status, it was politically awkward for him to be Master Cheng's daughter. They were indeed not a good match. Lu Zhao was sent away by Jiang Pengji, and Guzhen also gave some space to the father and daughter. Jiang Pingji sat in Gu Zhen's seat and took a clean cup of wine. She drank by herself and said, "Father, why are you here all of a sudden?" She had asked this question once before. The first time, she still had the live stream open. The second time, she turned it off. Lu Shi said, "I'm here for my unfilial son, Lu Zhao." Chapter 1395. Lu Shi was silent for a long time. After a while, he said calmly and confidently, "You won't kill him, so there's nothing to worry about." "Indeed, I won't kill him. Zhao is quite cute." She changed the topic. "I won't kill him, but that doesn't mean others won't." Most people would think that the others Jiang Pengji mentioned were radicals who were loyal to her. No matter how well Jiang Pengji did, no matter how high she rose, and no matter how many children her age could play mahjong together, she had no intention of getting married or pregnant. It was impossible for her subordinates not to be anxious. Under such circumstances, there would definitely be people who wanted her to have an heir as soon as possible, even if it was a son from another branch of the family. But there were also people who supported Jiang Pengji. Lu Zhao was the biggest target to eliminate any hidden danger that could usurp the throne. However, Lu Shi knew that Jiang Pengji was not referring to those people, but someone else. "Because it's dangerous, I want to use marriage as an excuse to send him far away. It's good to let him be a rich and idle man. You don't look like someone who is willing to live in peace." Jiang Pengji sneered. "Can a rich and idle man satisfy your appetite? No one in the world is born greedy." Lu Shi avoided the question. "As long as that unfilial son is satisfied." Jiang Pengji said, "Zhao is Lanting's biological brother. Of course, he will get what he wants." The father and daughter's conversation came to an end, and they drank a jar of wine in silence. Jiang Pengji asked him, "What kind of person is Gumin?" "Her? She's a person who is passionate about life. She's sunny and beautiful. You can tell from her eyes that she grew up in a comfortable and peaceful environment." Lu Shi raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. "I thought you were very similar to her, but it turns out that I was wrong." The first time he saw Jiang Pengji, he knew that she and Gu Min were completely different people. Both of them were pure, but one was pure white and the other was pure black. Jiang Pengji said, "Look at you. You make it sound like I'm a ruthless person who kills people like flies." Lu Shi was strangely silent. Wasn't she? Not to mention what kind of person she was in her previous life. The number of people who had died in her hands in the past few years in Dongqing was in the tens of thousands. "When did you start to doubt me?" Lu Shi had never been able to figure out. Jiang Pengji smiled. Her eyes were misty because of the wine. "That's an interesting question, father. I've never trusted anyone since the beginning." Jiang Pengji played with the wine cup in her hand, and her lips curled into a sly smile. If it were an ordinary person, most of them would feel uneasy because they're suddenly in an unfamiliar environment and urgently need to find stability from someone they know. Recognizing the body's identity and the body's relatives and obtaining a sense of security from them was one of the most convenient channels. It was also a reflexive choice for the weak to protect themselves. I personally think that I am not a weakling. The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. There were too many things to complain about. He didn't know if she was too conceited and arrogant or something else, but she was also quite narcissistic. From the very beginning, I have never acknowledged Lu Shi's identity, nor will I regard Lu Shi's identity and connections as my own, nor will I be completely immersed in them. Jiang Pengji said, "Jump out of the shackles and barriers of identity and emotions. Many things are not difficult to explain." Without the filter brought by her identity and emotions, she was able to calmly watch Lu Shi's performance. She was happy to cooperate with him. Lu Shi was speechless. Sure enough, the deep love between father and daughter was an illusion created by the two acting queens. "You and I are not meant to be. It is all thanks to acting." Lu Shi said, "Do you know that there's a phrase called acting out for real?" No matter how good an actor's acting was, he or she would also be lost in the overly realistic emotions. They would involuntarily act out for real and lose themselves in the illusion. Lu Shi found that Jiang Pengji did not have this problem at all. Even when the father-daughter relationship was at its best, she still maintained her rationality. Jiang Pingji knew what Lu Shi was trying to say. I have long passed the age of yearning for fatherly and motherly love. Maybe I yearned for it when I was young because I was weak. But after that period of time, these feelings are no longer necessities for me. They are burdens. Jiang Pingji said expressionlessly. Even if I have a 12-year-old body again, a kind and gentle father, a dignified and beautiful stepmother, and an adorable and silly brother, I can't go back. I can't go back. I can act, but I really can't regard someone younger than me as my father. You are making things difficult for me. Moreover, the kind and gentle father was fake, the dignified and beautiful stepmother was fake, and the cute and adorable brother was also fake. How could she have real feelings for something that was fake? Lu Shi, wait, she was actually older than him? How did Jiang Pingji call a man younger than her father without any psychological barriers? Lu Shi's eyes said it all. Jiang Pingji replied, I am a professional person. Lu Shi, the two of them were silent again. Lu Shi did not expect the two of them to lay their cards on the table so easily. Even though they already knew the truth, there was still a layer of window paper that had not been exposed. Now that it had been exposed, neither of them could pretend that it had never happened. Jiang Pingji said, You have said so much to me today. Are you planning to form an alliance with me? Lu Shi replied, Why not? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Jiang Pingji revealed a meaningful smile. What happened to the allies who had formed an alliance with her in the past? That person's hiding place is extremely secretive. Although I don't know the specific location, he is definitely in Wanzhou, by your side. Lu Shi said, His purpose is very clear. He wants the fate of the whole world. As the son of fate, you must be a target that he keeps a close eye on. Jiang Pingji said, I know. I also have a question. Wouldn't it be easier for him to plot against me and fight for the world by himself? The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. He was slightly speechless. You have the god-slaying sword by your side. Why are you still asking this question? The main system had been cowardly and refused to show up. Wasn't it because the dimensional patrolling merchant had not left? Before the hidden danger of the plane was solved, it was impossible for him to leave. That was why the main system had its eyes on Jiang Pingji. In addition, Jiang Pingji said, I just find it boring. Since the dimensional patrolling merchant restrains him, what is the point of my existence? She thought she was the chess player. Suddenly knowing that she was just a chess piece in someone else's hands, she was naturally unhappy. I don't know either, Lu Shi said. Jiang Pingji asked, You came to lay your cards on the table with me. Isn't this a betrayal to him? Are you worried about me? Lu Shi raised his eyebrows and said firmly, Don't worry, he is not nearby. He won't know. Jiang Pingji said, One last question. Have you sent someone to assassinate Wen Zheng? Chapter 1396. Lu Shi's face showed some surprise and astonishment. Jiang Pingji looked at his face calmly without blinking. Is this important to you? Lu Shi raised his eyebrows and looked at Jiang Pingji with a complicated expression. He wasn't a gossipy person, but he was curious about the man who was lucky enough to get so many beauties in the history that Gumin knew. He had suspected Qiguan Rang before, but ever since Qiguan Rang married Wei Yuan's eldest daughter, Lu Shi removed him from the list. Now, he wasn't so sure. Could it be that Qiguan Rang would lose his wife in the future and the two of them would secretly get married a few years later? If that was the case, what would happen to Wei Ci? Jiang Pingji didn't know what Lu Shi was thinking. She said indifferently, Honesty is the basic attitude of an alliance. I didn't send anyone to kill him. Lu Shi shook his head and denied it. He suddenly thought of something and said with uncertainty, But I can't guarantee that I didn't. All living creatures had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and he was no exception. However, he was arrogant and conceited. He regarded the 7 emotions and 6 desires as a burden. So he took the initiative to abandon this part of his emotions. In the end, this part of the emotions became an independent Lu Shi. Although he became independent, they came from the same source, and the other party retained his strength. If he wanted to use my hand to do something, I wouldn't be able to detect it. Lu Shi hated this state of affairs. The other party had taken advantage of the situation and controlled the body to strangle Gu Min, who had just given birth. Not only Gu Min, but the two sons who died young were also related to the other party. Lu Shi didn't dare to think about it. Gu Min was desperate and resentful before she died. She had always been a smart person. The main body of the system wanted to kill Gu Min mostly because Gu Min knew something she shouldn't have known, and that was why she was killed. For example, the truth of the two sons' deaths. The main body was afraid that Gu Min would spill the beans, so he killed her. Jiang Pengji said, Wenjing injured his left hand in the assassination. According to him, the assassins behaved strangely. They didn't seem to want to kill him, but more like they were testing something. At first, I suspected that they were sent by you to test whether Wenjing was my weakness. Lu Shi was confused. Weakness? Jiang Pengji said, the person I trust the most and am least guarded against is my weakness. Lu Shi remained silent for a while. With all due respect, such a person can't possibly exist, right? Everyone should have a dream. Who knows, I might have guessed it. Jiang Pengji's tone remained calm as usual, as if what she said was as normal as it's a sunny day today. She said, I have my reasons for suspecting you. Weren't you my enemy before we had a showdown and formed an alliance? As a normal father, no one would like a wandering ghost to take over his daughter's body and identity. It was only natural for him to take over everything she had and use it to make a name for himself, right? If I were the father, I would punch that shameless outsider to death. I also suspected that Lu Shi wasn't dead and that she was still alive in some corner of the world. When I unite the world and stand in the most honorable position in the world, you will let her come back and occupy this body and identity. Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji had always been on opposing sides. Jiang Pengji had taken over Lu Shi's daughter's body. Why would Lu Shi like her when he knew it? Was it because she could achieve something that Lu Shi could never achieve in his lifetime? Lu Shi was not Gu Zhan. He might not care about fame and fortune. They could remove their masks and talk calmly only because they had the same enemy and had no choice but to form an alliance. Following Jiang Pengji's narration, Lu Shi's calm expression began to crack. After a person dies, it takes a certain amount of time for their spirit to completely dissipate. When I entered this body, my body was warm. In other words, someone took away the real Lu Shi in a very short time. Lu Shi had just left, and I came right after. I don't need to think too much about who took Lu Shi away. Of course, I have reason to suspect that you are in cahoots with that person and have reached some kind of mutually beneficial agreement. You have to pretend to be calm and composed in front of the enemy who killed your daughter every day. Your professionalism is beyond doubt. Jiang Pengji said with a tone of, I knew it. My speculation is not baseless, right? Lu Shi was speechless and only retorted after a while. You know that I have ill intentions towards you, but you can still play along with me calmly. You are indeed worthy of being the future Emperor Chen. You are indeed admirable. Jiang Pengji said, the reason why conspiracies are so frightening is because of the dark word. Unknown dangers are the most difficult to guard against. You belong to the known category to me. At the same time, you don't know that I have ill intentions towards you. Who do you think should be more afraid? Lu Shi was speechless. He was really speechless. He had thought that Jiang Pengji was important enough, but the person in front of him was more difficult to deal with than he had expected. Jiang Pengji said, as we speak, I am suddenly very curious about something. My dear ally, can you explain it to me? Lu Shi was speechless. How could he say no? If they continued talking, he would really doubt whether his decision to form an alliance with Jiang Pengji was right or wrong. To some extent, Jiang Pengji was much more terrifying than the main body of the system. As a separate part of the system, you must have a reason to give up your cooperation with him and your plan to let Lu Shi come back and take over my body, right? If the reason is not good enough, I really doubt whether you sincerely want to cooperate with me or are you trying to trick me. Lu Shi was silent for a long time. He refused to answer the question, but Jiang Pengji could guess. For Lu Shi, who was more important than his daughter, Lu Shi and son, Lu Zhao, This person could make him give up his cooperation with the system and turn to Jiang Pengji as an ally. After thinking about it, there was only one answer. Gumin. Gumin's death has something to do with the main body of the system. Jiang Pengji said with certainty. You said before that the main body of the system took over your body and used it to do things you didn't want to do, and you didn't know anything about it. Let me make a bold guess. Could it be that the guy used your body to hurt Gumin, or even kill her? You know the truth. So you decided to abandon your previous plan and form an alliance with me? Lu Shi glanced at her out of the corner of his eye and said coldly, You can shut up. She knew that it was a wound that should not be touched, but she still stepped on it persistently. If it were not for her strength, she would have been put in a gunny sack and beaten to death. It seems that I have guessed correctly. Jiang Pengji was not surprised. Because this body belongs to your daughter, we are on opposite sides, and there is no possibility of peaceful coexistence. When the main body of the system is killed, if you don't want to die, you'd better find a way out for yourself. Once the system died, Jiang Pengji would have nothing to worry about. She would personally remove all the hidden dangers. She hoped that Lu Shi would not do anything that would cross her bottom line. Chapter 1397. Lu Shi said, Don't be so sure. Even if you and I are allies, how can we easily kill someone who is on par with God? God? Huh. Jiang Pengji said coldly. You're just a stray dog. What else can you do besides barking and hiding? Lu Shi was speechless. Her words were reasonable, and he couldn't refute it. After all, the main body of the system was in such a state. Lu Shi said expressionlessly, If that's the case, I won't say any more nonsense. I wish you good luck. I only hope that you can get what you want. Don't be like me, who was too smart for my own good and lost the one I love. I was wrong. Maybe you don't love at all. Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, Who said that? How can a lovable and lovely person like me be a single dog? Lu Shi couldn't bear it anymore and said, Shut up. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time she saw Lu Shi on the verge of breaking down. Lu Shi said, According to what we know, the person is hiding around you. It's very likely that he's with someone close to you. If Jiang Pengji wasn't careful, she would lose the person. Let's see if she could still laugh then. Of course I know. I've locked onto the target. No one can take my things and people away from me. Jiang Pengji said confidently and conceitedly. Lu Shi held back and didn't say anything sarcastic in the end. After saying goodbye to Lu Shi, Jiang Pengji left with Lu Zhao, who was anxiously planting mushrooms. Sister, what did you talk about with father? He doesn't look too good. Jiang Pengji said, We talked about adult matters. Children shouldn't ask too much. Lu Zhao pursed his lips and tried hard to suppress the curiosity in his heart. Less curiosity killed the cat. About the youngest daughter of the Cheng family. Are you serious? Jiang Pengji's tone was cheerful and didn't sound unhappy, but Lu Zhao didn't dare to say yes. The youngest daughter of the Cheng family's father was Cheng Cheng. Cheng had an invisible influence in the Wanzhou group. Lu Zhao didn't dare to provoke him to avoid unnecessary suspicion. Lu Zhao said bitterly, Isn't that to avoid father's forced marriage? Besides, the youngest daughter of the Cheng family isn't young anymore. How could she not be engaged? I'm just using it as a shield. Father won't stay in Wanzhou for long. When he returns to Chengzhou to retire, I'll have escaped with my life. Sister, don't tell me that you think I'm spending too much and want to drive me out. Lu Zhao took advantage of Lu Shi in Chengzhou and Jiang Pengji in Wanzhou. His monthly salary was not low. He had reason to suspect that Jiang Pengji despised him for being too extravagant. Jiang Pengji kicked his calf impatiently. She was slow and gentle. Otherwise, Lu Zhao's leg would have been broken. Lu Zhao, are you a man now? If you like him, then you like him. If you don't like him, then you don't like him. Why worry so much? Jiang Pengji put her hand on his shoulder, as if they were good brothers. If you like it, I'll immediately go to your house and arrange a marriage for you. If you don't like it, I'll immediately go to your house and ask Mr. Cheng to arrange a marriage for his daughter. I don't want you to have other thoughts while we're unmarried. Jiang Pengji said mercilessly, after this year, I'm afraid I'll have to go to war and attack Nanshan. I won't be back for another year or two. By the time I'm back, maybe his child will be able to crawl and walk. Do you really not regret it? Lu Zhao did not speak. Jiang Pengji pressed his head with one hand, causing him to bend over. You're young, but you have a lot of thoughts. Don't meddle in adult matters. Just live your own life. Jiang Pengji had always been alone. She had no siblings. Lu Zhao, the cowardly and weak boy, was especially likable to her. Lu Zhao had no conflict of interest with her, and the boy had never harbored any ill intentions towards her. Naturally, Jiang Pengji could tolerate him. Not to mention anything else, just for the sake of Gu Min, her brainless fan, she had to be merciful and soft-hearted. After the siblings walked for a while, Lu Zhao stammered and squeezed out a few words. Then I'll have to trouble you, sister. Help me ask if she's engaged. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, what if she's engaged? Then ask her if she likes her future husband's family. Jiang Pengji asked again, what if she likes them? Then ask her future husband's family if they have a short lifespan. Jiang Pengji smiled and asked, what if they have a long lifespan? Then ask her if she has considered having a daughter or something. Jiang Pengji said, what if she only has a boy? Sister, you're forcing me to my death, Lu Zhao said. Jiang Pengji said, if you really have such a hobby, I can beat you to death right now. Don't be a scourge while you're alive. Lu Zhao shuddered. Could he be blamed? Sister was the one who started it. He was just reacting accordingly. Jiang Pengji was not very busy recently. The next day, she prepared a generous gift and visited Cheng Cheng's manor. Cheng and his wife did not know why and were secretly guessing her intentions. They did not expect to hear Jiang Pengji mention the youngest daughter in the manor. The husband and wife were both smart people. How could they not understand Jiang Pengji's intentions? She was planning to arrange a marriage for her brother, Lu Zhao. Even though Lu Zhao was the son of a concubine, he knew how to cozy up to someone powerful. In a marriage market, he was quite popular. I already understand your intentions, Lord Lanting. Lu San Langjun is naturally a good choice. I've met him before, Cheng said. Although the marriage of children is decided by the parents, it also depends on the children's opinions. If my daughter is interested, I'm naturally willing to form an in-law relationship with you. Cheng Cheng's daughter had naturally been engaged before, but the engagement had been broken off soon after. At that time, Huang Song had openly and secretly hoped that Cheng would attach himself to him. But Cheng had a temper and refused to agree. Unexpectedly, the in-laws fawned on those in power. When they saw that Cheng had rejected Huang Song, they were afraid that Huang Song would vent his anger on them. So they took the initiative to find an excuse to cancel the engagement. Cheng almost fainted from anger. Later, Cheng had a firm foothold on Jiang Pengji's side. Jiang Pengji's development also improved day by day. The in-laws shamelessly stuck to them again. They said that their son liked their daughter so much that he did not eat or drink all day and would not marry anyone else. Cheng was disgusted again. Because of this, Cheng and his wife could not continue to arrange a marriage for their daughter, so they simply kept her for another 2 years. Cheng had also met Lu Zhao. Judging from the current situation, Lu Zhao had no ambition. He could not run away as a rich and idle person. The family structure was simple, and the Lord was also open-minded. His daughter would not be wronged if she married him. Cheng was very satisfied. He did not hide it from Jiang Pengji and took the initiative to tell her the details. Jiang Pengji said, it's okay. These people are shameless. If they dare to talk nonsense again, we'll find an excuse to dismiss them in the future. Cheng Cheng's status in Wanzhou was not low, but he really did not have much real power. He was also an upright person. No wonder the villains bullied him. As long as the youngest daughter of the Cheng family nodded, the marriage would be considered stable. He thought that he would have to argue, but who would have thought that as soon as he said it, his daughter would agree? Daughter, after all, this is a lifelong event. As a father, I will not force you to do anything. It's all up to you. Do you want to reconsider? She had agreed too quickly, and he was a little flustered. I've met Lu Zhao before. He has a good temperament, but he doesn't lose his cuteness. He's easier to deal with than others. Chapter 1398. Sister, sister, what did Qingyangzi say? Is there an engagement? Do you like your husband's family? Is your husband's family short-lived? Do you have plans to have a daughter? Jiang Pengji had just returned when the boy, who had just crossed his legs and swung his legs, immediately came up to her shamelessly. Jiang Pengji brushed him away with a slap. This boy was so mischievous. He was itching for a beating. I'm thirsty. She raised her eyebrows at Lu Zhao. The lackey hurriedly poured tea for her and massaged her shoulders and legs. He was extremely attentive. Jiang Pengji said with satisfaction, "There is an engagement, but that marriage fell through long ago. In the end, you benefited from it. If there are no other accidents, this marriage is in the bag. As long as Master Cheng gives his word, I'll get someone to pick an auspicious day in a few days and send an iceman to the manor to be the matchmaker for you. Master Cheng's family is very strict. You can't make any mistakes. You should restrain yourself." Lu Zhao's little face was smiling like a spring flower. He opened his mouth and said all kinds of sweet words that cost nothing. If it was a young girl who had her first awakening of love, she might not be able to resist the temptation of this small mouth. However, Jiang Pengji was his sister. Not only did the latter's heart not beat wildly, but she also slapped him. "What about the betrothal gift? Have you thought about it?" Jiang Pengji asked him expressionlessly. Lu Zhao was at a loss. He immediately looked at her with a burning gaze. If he could shape-shift, he might be able to see the dog's tail that was wagging behind him. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and said, "Zhao, don't tell me you want me to pay for your wife's dowry." "Sister, have pity on me," Lu Zhao said matter-of-factly. "Sister, look at me. I don't have any good points. Other than eating, drinking, and playing, I don't know anything else. I'm weak, pitiful, and helpless, but I can still eat. If you don't raise me, my whole family will have nothing to eat." Jiang Pengji had never seen such a shameless person. She was angry and amused at the same time. She wanted to slap his face again. "How long do you plan to hide the assets that mother left for you?" Jiang Pengji asked straightforwardly. Don't think that she didn't know that Gu Min had left a generous inheritance to Lu Zhao before she passed away. It wasn't much for her, but for Lu Zhao, a life of glory and wealth was no problem. "This kid doesn't lack money, yet he keeps complaining about being poor to me. Does he have any shame?" Lu Zhao wanted to play dumb, but when he saw Jiang Pengji's clear eyes, he knew that his secret could not be kept. "Sigh, even if mother left behind a mountain of gold and silver, I can only sit and eat it all away," he said helplessly. "Besides, on the surface, I'm just the son of a concubine from a lowly family. It's hard to guarantee that no one will suspect me if I make so much money all of a sudden. There are too many shrewd people working for Sister. I'm afraid that if I make too much money, they'll suddenly kill me. I'm also very, very bitter, sob, sob, sob." Speaking of this, Lu Zhao felt extremely bitter in his heart. Other than being a good-for-nothing who didn't work hard, who didn't know how to distinguish grain from grain, everything he did was life-threatening. He couldn't become an official. He couldn't do business. If Lu Zhao didn't think of a way to make Jiang Pengji support him, how would he be able to provide for his old age? Weep, weep, weep. Oink, carrot, oink. I'm bitter in my heart. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. "By saying this, you want me to restore your identity as the third legitimate son?" When Lu Zhao heard this, he was so scared that he almost jumped 3 feet high. His identity as the son of a concubine was already being watched by so many people. If he were restored as the legitimate son, and he was born from the same mother as Sister, he wouldn't be able to live to see the sun rise the next day. Qiguan Rang, Yang Si, and Feng Zhen were all vegetarians? They'd really plot to murder him. "Elder sister, please spare this little brother. It's not like you don't know how scary the shrewd people working for you are. They'll really kill people. I'm still your biological brother from the same mother. Can't we have some brotherly love?" Lu Zhao wished he could kneel down to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but rub her brows. "Stand up, don't be so cowardly," Lu Zhao said righteously. This isn't cowardice. This is called a wise man submits to circumstances. Jiang Pingji said impatiently, "Tomorrow I'll look for my father to ask for a betrothal gift for you. He'll pay half, and I'll pay the other half. After all, you're the apple of Master Cheng's eye. If the betrothal gift is shabby, it'll inevitably give people the impression that you're being disrespectful. You can offend anyone but a scholar. You have to maintain your dignity." Lu Zhao stammered, "Asking for it from my father? This isn't very good." Jiang Pingji lifted her foot and kicked Lu Zhao. She couldn't help but say angrily, "You're his son, not mine. He won't pay for his son's marriage. How can it be such a good thing?" Lu Zhao hugged her leg and said, "An elder sister is like a mother. Sister, do you understand?" Jiang Pengji's face was cold. She grabbed Lu Zhao's collar with one hand and dragged him out. She threw him aside and closed the door in one go. Lu Zhao lay on the ground and rolled around for a while. Seeing that Jiang Pengji wasn't soft-hearted, he sighed faintly and turned over to lie on the ground. He turned his head to look at the bright sunlight and the azure sky outside. As he looked, the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl into a faint smile. "Mother, please bless your son to get what he wants." The sunlight was dazzling. He squinted his eyes lazily and maintained the posture of lying on his back. He took a nap with his limbs spread out. The maids who were passing by saw him, and they all chuckled and went around him. Not long after, the news that the Lu residence was about to hold a big wedding spread out. Everyone knew that Jiang Pengji's brother was getting married. So what if he's getting married? He's just the son of a concubine. Why does my lord have to indulge him so much? Yang Si rolled around in the piles of bamboo slips. The dark circles under his eyes were almost comparable to the iron-eating beast that Wei Siai had raised. "I'm not afraid that he'll grow ambitious." Han Yu frowned when he heard that. Seeing that Yang Si was slacking off again, his excellent self-restraint almost broke down. He couldn't wait to kick over the piles of bamboo slips next to him, so that Yang Si would be buried alive by the bamboo slips and get rid of a great evil for the world. Lu Zhaowen is not good at martial arts, and his wife's clan is Mr. Chung. He can't borrow any strength to pose a threat to my lord. Han Yu calmly analyzed. If my lord can't even tolerate such a useless brother of a concubine, I don't know how the outside world will slander my lord. If you're jealous, just say it. Yang Si exploded all of a sudden. How was he jealous? What was he jealous about? Did he look like that kind of person? Han Yu sneered. "I heard that Captain Jiang is pregnant and he goes to the military camp every day to take attendance. He would rather walk around with a big belly and let the outside world speculate about the child's father than marry Yang Si." Yang Si was jealous. Yang Si was so angry that he pulled out the tip of the writing brush. Hum hum hum. Asterisk asterisk caret asterisk asterisk asterisk. Why did everyone bully him? He was still busy today. Yang Si held the bald writing brush in his mouth and fumbled to take down another brush from the brush holder. He sighed and continued to bury himself in his work. The reactions of the others were similar to Yang Si and Han Yu. Some people snorted, and some people were indifferent. Chapter 1399. Jiang Pingji had a big family business, so it was not difficult for her to prepare a betrothal gift. Lucy kept saying unfilial son and unfilial son, one after another, but he was also prepared and prepared all kinds of betrothal gifts. Cheng Cheng started to save up for his daughter's dowry when she was born. Now that his daughter had grown up, her dowry would only increase. The man's betrothal gift and the woman's dowry were ready, so the next step was easy. According to the usual wedding procedures of the gentry, it would take at least half a year to prepare, but considering the current situation, the wedding had to be brought forward. From a matchmaking to the marriage ceremony, it only took a little more than a month. Time was tight, but the wedding was not. The man's betrothal gift and the woman's dowry surprised the onlookers. The lord doted on his brother. Lu Sanlang's wedding is already like this. When the Duke of Lanting gets married, won't the scene be grand enough to be recorded in the history books? The people were anxious. The Duke of Lanting's brother was already married, so why was the Duke of Lanting not interested? If Jiang Pengji was not a flower on a high mountain, they would even dream of matchmaking for her so that they could get rid of singleness and have a baby as soon as possible. What marriage? Which man in the world has the ability to marry the Duke of Lanting? Isn't it better like this now? A few of the young girls said something back in displeasure. The Duke of Lanting would be tarnished if he married anyone. It was better to marry him himself and let him choose his palace. No one is worthy, but it's not good to be single. Everyone agreed that no one was worthy of Jiang Pengji, but they also disapproved of her being single. Let's not talk about the distant, just the recent. After a decade, who would the Duke of Lanting pass his family business to? Instead of passing it to his own son, would he pass it to the son of a branch family or a brother? Who would be willing to do that? Wasn't it all for themselves and their descendants that one had to fight to the death in order to live one's life? Someone sneered and mocked. Do you guys have nothing better to do? The Duke of Lanting is not married, but that doesn't mean she has no guests, right? In the previous dynasty, Princess Hongshan kept 54 handsome men. How can the Duke of Lanting lose to her? No matter who the child belongs to, as long as it is the Duke of Lanting's, the bloodline will continue. How can it be given to outsiders? Don't worry about me. The commoners nearby stopped talking. They felt that this excuse was very convincing. At the wedding banquet, the two newlyweds were shy and timid. When Jiang Pengji saw them, she could not help but feel gratified, as if she had a son who had just grown up. Even Lu Shi, who had always been displeased with Lu Zhao, smiled a little today. After forming a family, I'll be an adult. As the head of a family, I have to be prudent in my actions and words. I can't be as reckless and stupid as before. Lu Shi thought for a long time, but the words that came out of his mouth were still full of sarcasm. Lu Zhao said, I will follow father's teachings. Lu Shi gave the gifts he had prepared early in the morning to the two newlyweds. This was prepared by Gumin many years ago. His feelings towards Lu Zhao were very complicated. At first, he resented Lu Zhao for taking Gumin's life. After all, he had always thought that his beloved wife had died because she was pregnant with Lu Zhao. In order to protect Lu Zhao and hide from the so-called fate, he had no choice but to remember his son as a concubine's son. He hadn't paid any attention to him for many years. By the time Lu Zhao grew up and became sensible, when he wanted to get close to him and make up for it, this child already had his own ideas and schemes. When Lu Shi found out the real cause of Gumin's death, not only did he feel guilty facing Lu Zhao, but he also had the urge to run away. He and Gumin gave birth to 3 sons and a daughter. 2 sons and a daughter died, and only Lu Zhao grew up and married. It would be great if a Min could see this scene. Lu Zhao did not know what his father was thinking. He was the groom today and was so happy that he forgot all his worries. Ah Zhao is a wastrel. As his wife, you should be more tired. Pay more attention to him inside and outside the mansion. If he's disobedient, remember to look for me. Jiang Pengji's words were really blunt. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over Lu Zhao's heart. I'll help you beat him up. Lu Zhao. Weep, weep, weep. Oink, carrot, oink. What a good sister. Was she looking for a younger sibling's wife or marrying him off to a younger brother? Jiang Pengji mocked him coldly. You're such a wastrel. No one will watch your wallet for you. Do you plan to enjoy the limelight at the beginning of the month and be poor at the end of the month? Lu Zhao, this fellow was born to enjoy. He wore the best clothes. Every piece of clothing had to be smoked with expensive aromatherapy before he was willing to wear it. All kinds of accessories were expensive. He had to have 3 vegetables, 3 meat, and 3 soup every day for his 3 meals. If he could take a carriage when he went out, he would not get off the ground. The horse that pulled the carriage had to be a fine horse with good blood. He spent 600 strings of coins a month. What did 600 strings of coins mean? Zhang Ping and a few other technical geeks only had an annual salary of 10,000 strings of coins, which was equivalent to an annual salary of 7 million. Lu Zhao, this rascal, spent 7,200 strings of coins a year, which was equivalent to 5,040,000. The prices of goods in this era were not high, but they were not low either. It was much higher than the ancient times in the dimension of the streaming room, but it was still much lower than the modern times in the streaming room. A year's allowance was 5,040,000. Jiang Pengji did not beat this younger brother to death. It was considered true love. Jiang Pengji knew that due to the situation, Lu Zhao could only be content and be a rice worm. It was fine that he was cheated by his younger brother in the past, but if his sister-in-law and future nieces and nephews were added on, Jiang Pengji's private treasury would be emptied. Lu Zhao felt like he had nothing to live for anymore. On the other hand, the bride at the side could not help but laugh. She was no longer as nervous and perturbed as before. The wedding banquet was rigid and boring. Jiang Pengji drank a toast from the newlyweds and looked around in boredom. It had been a long time since such a joyous event had happened in Wanzhou. Everyone drank a little too much. Jiang Pengji also pretended that she could not hold her liquor. She mixed in with a group of drunkards and secretly stole the tipsy Wei Si out. The two of them stayed in the shadow of the courtyard wall outside the manor. She secretly kissed Wei Si. I saw that when Zheng and the others' children are already so big today. Time really flies. Wei Si raised his hand and rubbed his flushed face. He forced himself to walk steadily. My lord, you want them too? He knew that Jiang Pengji liked children very much. It was like that in her previous life. Jiang Pengji sighed. I want them, but you won't give them to me. Wei Si said, the timing isn't right. I'm afraid that even if I'm willing, my lord won't accept them. Wei Si was both expectant and a little repulsed by the issue of children. Would the children in this life be the Jiang Yin and Wei Tsong of his memories? Jiang Pengji said, that's true. You're so good. How can I bear to expose you to the enemy's eyes? Wei Si tilted his head and looked at her in confusion. He did not understand what she meant. Jiang Pengji said, you'll know in the future. I'll send you back to the manor. Remember to drink some hangover soup. She sent Wei Si back to the manor. She hugged and kissed him for a while before leaving reluctantly. Jiang Pengji said, time passes faster. When the time comes, there won't be so many worries. Wei Si listened to her words and could not help but laugh. The moon was high in the sky, and night fell. On this quiet night, something happened that made Jiang Pengji furious. Chapter 1400. Lang Jun, why are you looking at me like this? The bride's face was flushed, and her watery black eyes were shimmering. Lu Zhao couldn't help but look away shyly. Madam, you are very beautiful tonight, Lu Zhao said uncomfortably. The most beautiful person I have ever seen. The red candles flickered around. Lu Zhao glanced at the gourd containing the nuptial wine. The gourd was divided into two, and the stem was connected by a red thread. There was a cup of sake on each side. He swallowed his saliva unnaturally and awkwardly invited the newly appointed wife to join him for a toast. It's getting late. Madam, why don't you drink first, undress, and go to bed early? As soon as he finished speaking, the blush of shyness spread from his neck to his ears and forehead. A little sweat came out. The bride sitting opposite him smiled reservedly and said in a soft and shy voice, I will listen to Lang Jun. The two picked up half of the gourd and tilted their upper bodies slightly. It seemed like a simple action, but Lu Zhao was so nervous that even his fingers were trembling. I finished. Lu Zhao grabbed his sleeves and glanced at the bed behind the screen. Madam, why don't you rest? The bride smiled and nodded. Lu Zhao seemed to be greatly encouraged and went forward to carry her. Fortunately, his wife in his arms was not heavy. Otherwise, Lu Zhao might not be able to carry her. Not long after, there was the sound of clothes sliding in the bridal room and the slightly ambiguous, subtle movements of the newlyweds. It was the first time for Lu Zhao to eat meat. Obviously, he didn't know what temperance was. After tossing and turning for a long time, he held the soft body in his arms and prepared to rest. The two newlyweds hadn't slept for long when there was a burst of hurried and panicked footsteps outside, waking up Lu Zhao, who had just fallen asleep. Madam, go to sleep first. I will go and have a look. Lu Zhao comforted his new wife, took the cloak hanging on the side, put it on, and got up to open the door. Don't you want to see what day it is? Lu Zhao was sleepy and tired at this moment, so he couldn't control his temper. He felt wronged being called on his wedding night. What happened? If it's not a big deal, I will find you tomorrow. The servant hurriedly said, Lang Jun, something big happened. What's the big deal? Lu Zhao was a little clear-headed at this moment, and an ominous premonition flashed in his heart. The servant was so anxious that he quickly reported the news, scaring Lu Zhao so much that he no longer felt sleepy. Wei Ci was assassinated and his corpse was left at the entrance of the alley. Lu Zhao's legs turned to jelly when he heard this. He more or less knew what kind of person Wei Ci was. He's dead? Who assassinated him? Lu Zhao didn't dare to imagine his sister's expression right now. Everyone in Wanzhou knew that he was one of the Duke of Lanting's trusted aides. No one expected that he would be assassinated on the night of the Duke of Lanting's brother's wedding. His bloody body was dumped in an alley less than half a street away from Lu Zhao's mansion. Who could have predicted this? Lu Zhao remembered the heat and hurriedly went back to his room to change into regular clothes. Before he left, he told his wife's dowry maids to take good care of her, prepare the carriage, and head to Mr. Wei Ci's residence. By the time Lu Zhao arrived, there were many people patrolling the vicinity of Wei Ci's mansion. The mansion was brightly lit. Sister, Mr. Wei, Lu Zhao wasn't stopped. When he arrived at the main hall of Wei Ci's mansion, he found many familiar faces sitting or standing inside. 90% of Jiang Pengji's trusted aides were present. The few who weren't present were shining in other prefectures and devoting their limited energy to unlimited work. What's the matter? Jiang Pengji heard the commotion and looked up at him. Why are you here instead of accompanying the newlyweds in the bridal chamber? Lu Zhao was shocked when he saw Jiang Pengji's appearance. His right leg, which had just stepped out, froze inside the door. Sister, I heard that Mr. Wei was assassinated. I came over to take a look. Has the murderer been caught? Jiang Pengji stood in the hall, her long hair draped over her shoulders. Other than a loose outer robe covering her shoulders, she only wore crescent white pajamas inside. The pajamas were dyed red with human blood. Even though most of the blood had coagulated and slowly turned from bright red to dark red, it was still a strong visual impact. Lu Zhao knew who the blood belonged to. It was either the assassin who assassinated Wei Ci or Wei Ci himself. Murderer? I didn't catch him. Jiang Pengji held the god-slaying saber in her arms. Her expression was exceptionally cold. Her eyes, which were clearly black and white, gave people the illusion that they were filled with blood. Lu Zhao could feel an aura known as murderous intent from afar. It scared him so much that the hairs on his back stood on end. Mr. Wei, sister, my condolences. Lu Zhao carefully tiptoed into the room and found a safer corner to sit down. He didn't dare to get close to Jiang Pengji and ask for a beating. Jiang Pengji, who was in such a state, could decapitate a person with a slap. Lu Zhao didn't want her to be a widow right after he got married. Jiang Pengji said coldly, My condolences? He's not dead yet. Lu Zhao's eyes lit up. He's not dead? Then why did the servant say that Wei Ci was assassinated and his body was left at the entrance of the alley? After a while, the doctor came back with a medical box to report. The wound on Wei Ci's body wasn't fatal, but he had lost a lot of blood. If Jiang Pengji hadn't discovered it early and let him bleed for half an hour, he wouldn't have been able to survive. Now, he was lucky to be alive. Who's so vicious? Master Yuan Jing said angrily, It's obvious that they want Zixiao dead. The owners of the surrounding residences were all high-ranking officials in Wanzhou. The security outside was stricter. There would be people patrolling every quarter of an hour. After Wei Ci was assassinated, he was left at the entrance of the alley not long after the previous patrol team left. There was still a quarter of an hour before the next patrol team arrived. When the patrol team found Wei Ci, his body would probably be cold. No one questioned why Jiang Pengji was the first to find Wei Ci. Even if they did, she wouldn't explain in detail. Master, it's getting late. I've sent people to keep an eye on Zixiao. I'll inform you as soon as the murderer is caught. Jiang Pengji persuaded Master Yuan Jing to go back to the residence and rest. After all, he was considered old. Jiang Pengji couldn't bear for him to stay up late. She was enough to keep an eye on Wei Si. The so-called murderer wouldn't dare to come again. No, maybe there wasn't a murderer like everyone thought. After Jiang Pengji sent Wei Si back to the residence, she returned to her home. She had just taken a shower and changed into her pajamas when she realized that Wei Si had left the residence. Not long after, she noticed that Wei Si's breath of life was abnormally declining. She immediately rushed over with the god-slaying sword. From beginning to end, apart from Wei Si, who was lying in a pool of blood, and the iron-eating beast that was squatting by his feet and scratching the ground, she didn't notice any other person's breath. Jiang Pengji saw Wei Si's appearance and suddenly had the illusion that she had fallen into an ice house. It was as if the blood in her body was about to condense into frost. The iron-eating beast quickly crawled to her feet and hugged her leg, crying out nonstop. Jiang Pengji tore the sleeves of her pajamas into strips and quickly stopped Wei Si's bleeding. She carried him back and called the doctor over. People who heard the news rushed over one after another. Everyone was shocked by the incident. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.